Yeah, we are live. Oh snaps! Another live session, man. I'm super stoked right now. What is going on, everybody? Tuning in. So
let's see here. Let me see if I can get this up over here. I can get Facebook so I can see it like everybody else behind me.
yeah, you might want to mute the face. Make sure the Facebook's not going and playing. Otherwise, we'll get reverb, delay reverb. Woo-hee! All right, what is going on? We got people joining us now. Good to see everybody. Love the action. Hope the weather is nice today. Give you guys a quick update. Illinois, Champaign, beautiful day today. We were actually out. I got out of the room. I wasn't here at all today. Just got back, and I did some product photo shooting. We're making a video for a new product that we have, so I was invited to come take some photos. Super excited about that. It was nice to just leave the room, be out in the open air, and playing
Talk with
cars.
other humans, inhuman.
Yeah, and we had lunch, like normal people together. So it was nice to mix that up. And so, how was the weather looking for you, Ryan?
Today was a bit better. It was a little hazy out in the morning, which meant it was a little cooler during the day.
Okay.
Yesterday it got up over 90, but that's normal out here. I live in Riverside, so as far as I'm concerned, it's beautiful. Can't complain.
Can't complain, man. When is it the nicest time in Riverside? What months?
In Riverside would be the key term there. Probably a day out of maybe May, and then somewhere into the October range.
A day in May, and then later in the year.
It depends who you ask. So I'm pretty open with temperature ranges. My wife's got like a 3-degree barrier top and bottom, so it's a little different.
Gotcha. All right.
Come on, everybody.
Woo. Well, I want to say hello to everybody. We're only a couple minutes in. We're gonna usually wait till the 5-minute mark to kind of start rolling the show, let people catch up. And so what is going on? I want to thank everybody that's been a part of the show regularly. You guys mean a lot to us. All the new people that are jumping in and checking out the TLR live stuff. We appreciate you too. And I hope you guys become good fans of the show. I enjoy doing them. It's a great way to put a message out there, get some information out there, and connect with everybody while we have downtime. Usually, this is done all at the track or face to face, and at like practice days, club race days, big race days. Usually, we get a lot of talking done there, and we'll probably do some media stuff while we're at the track. But since we don't have too much racing going on, we're gonna do the live stuff from home, but not a deal breaker. I still enjoy them. So I want to thank Ryan for coming on board tonight. He actually just got back from the dentist, so his face is a little bit
mostly straight.
He's feeling good. It's straight. It just feels crooked. You know what I mean? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Benjamin, it will be possible. We always save all these live streams, so you can rewatch it later.
Yeah, they're actually all on YouTube. There'll be a playlist like we created for the 8-scale build, the Elite build, and then we also did the 22 X4 build as well with Frank. So that's a playlist, so you can sit there and watch. I actually used that playlist when I was building my 8X Elite Nitro buggy. It helped out a lot. There's a lot of tips and tricks that I was wonder what they do here, or how did they set this. And if you watch the video, it has all those little tips and tricks in there to how to build an 8-scale properly. And Ryan goes through every single bag, man. Did you enjoy that? Did you have a good time?
I do. The only thing that's a little weird is people are always like, oh my gosh, it took you so long to build the car, blah, blah, blah. Because like, they think about it and they look at it and they look at all the time for each video, right? And they add it up. Yeah. It's like, well, if I was building the video, bag A, for instance, I mean, probably takes me maybe like 12 or 13 minutes.
Right.
But the video for bag A is like
an hour and 20 minutes.
Right, because as you're doing it, you kind of getting in. So when I tend to do stuff and the biggest thing I've always done with folks that are new that I want to really help is I'll invite them over to help them build their car. And it's mainly because when you've been doing it for a long time, you're building a car and you just naturally grab stuff and do stuff. Like you'll check the fitment of this before you put it together, or you'll sand this or file this a little bit, or make sure this is cut off properly, or grease this or not grease that, or clean that or not clean that. And you do it naturally. And so that's the hardest part when you're doing a video like this, is especially when other people aren't there to kind of interact with you, you kind of forget to say, oh, and then I did this, and then I did this. And that's what's nice about doing these Facebook Live videos, is it's almost like you're building it with everybody else. And when you're building it with everybody else and you're trying to give them all those little tidbits, it takes a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you got to explain why you do it too, right?
Yeah, like the shock boots, putting a hole in there, it makes a lot of sense. Otherwise you have a vacuum and the thing's sucked up in there and it doesn't work properly.
Yep.
You vent it with a little small hole. You could use a hole punch, and it works like a champ, man. And if had I not watched that, I probably wouldn't have done it. I would have just put it together and said, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. I built it by the book. But there's a lot of tips.
Either they tear or they don't.
Yeah, exactly. So venting them, just small things like that help a car go together so that it functions better on the track. It's built not just by the manual spec, but a pro spec almost. So
right.
All right. So let's say hi to everybody. We're 5 minutes in, so we're gonna start the show after some saying hello. Got Dylan Peterson in the house. Thanks for tuning in, Dylan. Justin Doyle, my man. I hope you're doing well. Floyd Brewer, what's going on watching from YouTube? There we go. Rui Almeida, what's going on? Also a YouTube watcher. Dean Clark, what's going on? Dean, good to see you back. Bob Taylor in the house saying hi to us. Thanks a lot, Bob. Always good to see you as well. Josh Lett, what's happening, Josh? Hope you're doing well. Omar, what's going on, Omar? We got William Hobbs in the house. Always good to see William. Got Nico. What's going on, Nico? Hope the car sales are doing good. And that so Nico's in the process of selling some cars that he doesn't often use, so he can save his money and buy an 8X Elite. So I'm excited for him. The journey is on. So Rob, what's going on, Rob from Colorado? Gonna say hi to you, buddy. David Jeffrey, what's up, David? RC Basher King, there you go. I love the name. Got to have fun, man. Got to go out there and bash once in a while. Mel, what's happening, Mel? Thanks for tuning in. Brad Burt in the house. From the Aussie land, saying from Wagga Wagga, Aussie land, baby. Aussie, dude. Australia. What did you think of Australia, Ryan?
I mean, I loved it. It's kind of hard to really talk about it a lot because it's literally like track, place we're staying, track, place we're staying when it's a Worlds event. But we had like a 4-hour period where we got to get out and we saw like kangaroos.
Yeah.
And, like the normal stuff you go see as a tourist. But we got to see the beach one night. We got to, I mean, the people are awesome. I love that cars have the right of way and not the humans, which I learned very abruptly in a parking lot. FYI. Yeah. And I love their traffic system. They literally have signs for you can't go slow through this merge. They literally will merge like 3 lanes into one, and they have a minimum speed of like 55. And you're like, okay, here we go. And everybody makes it happen.
Buckle up, people.
It's awesome.
Making it happen. Yeah, like here, when people slow down while they're merging, you're like, no, the wrong thing to do. Get on the freeway. You don't slow down. You accelerate. Right. Please. Yeah, Australia was fantastic. If you have a chance to check out Australia, I recommend it, man. I've been there, I want to say 3 or 4 times. I'd have to actually go back and count, but man, every time, such a fun time. Beautiful cities, awesome people, great culture, awesome tracks too. So it's just a very long flight.
Yeah.
All right, there you go, Chuck. TLR for life. Barry Baker in the house. Always a pleasure to have my man Barry Baker watching the show. Aaron King already got the questions going. 8XT soon? All right, Matt. Oh. What's that?
What do you mean? It's right here. I have it. I don't understand what everybody's complaining about. I run it like every day in my backyard.
So evil. I get so many questions about the 8XT, man. I'm like, ugh, and then here you go teasing people. Oh man, after this show, it's gonna be a nightmare for me. I'm gonna get texts and emails like crazy. Hey man, can I get an 8XT to try?
As they say, better you than me, buddy.
I tell you guys, it happens. All right, so we got Guillermo. Oh man, I don't want to butcher his name. Andrade Blondest. Hi from Lima, Peru, dude. What's going on, man? Thanks for watching. Worldwide, once again, with Aussie and Lima, Peru. We got the channel keeps growing. We've got Anthony Westergaard. What's up, Anthony? Rob the Mouth Millen. The Mouth. He actually put his own his nickname in his name. Right? Yeah, that's about. Hey, I was wondering, does Anthony have a nickname?
I have yet to hear one for him.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Okay. And he does so many different things. Like, how could he not have?
Yeah, I feel like he just has a badass nickname for some reason. I just feel like Anthony has a badass nickname. So I was like, does he have a nickname? Because it's probably going to be badass, right? I don't know. So no, you don't nothing that you know of. Somebody's got to know. So if you know, go ahead and type that. I'll buzz it sooner or later, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Matt Miller, so many questions, so little time. So maybe we could do an episode 2 later. But right now, let's get through episode 1. Yep, Thursday night. Grant knows what's up. Hi, Grant. How you doing? And Jeff Brap. It's Nitro for sure, Brap. Can't really brop a 10 scale electric car. You know what I mean? Can't really brop a 10 scale electric car. All right, and we've got Peyton Puckett. What's up, Peyton? So I'm sorry if I missed you guys, if you said hi, but that's pretty much most of everybody. So I want to welcome everybody to tonight's show. This is the 8 scale edition. Next week, we're going to have Frank on to do the 10 scale version of this. But I wanted to do kind of approach these live videos now that we've done the RTM, the regional team managers. We've got through all the guys, introduced everyone to everybody, and great group of dudes. You know these guys pretty well, Ryan. Yeah,
a lot of them. I mean, if I don't know somebody like personally, usually I know them through they'll find me through Messenger or find me through the TLR Facebook page, or they'll email me. I mean, I usually tell everybody where to get a hold of me. Yeah, and I'm always trying to answer questions. I can't say it's perfect or that I get to them right away all the time, but yeah, most of these guys I know, and it's what I love about this world. All of them are pretty darn good people. So
yeah, excellent people, man. So I'm excited when racing gets rolling, everybody starts interacting like normal. For everybody to get to know the RTMs, they're outstanding individuals, 100% behind their backs, and I can say that they have my back too. So so moving on. So we finished the RTM guys. Now let's move on and talk about the 8 scale and kind of generate some questions or topics, some help and some information for people that are relatively new. I'm thinking maybe into the 8 scale stuff, maybe less than a year. This is going to be beneficial for you guys. People that have been doing it for a long time. You guys are pros. This stuff is probably you guys already know this stuff, but that's all right. Maybe you can add something to this with a comment and say, and maybe it's missed.
That is definitely one thing that's quite a bit different from Nitro to electric. You can feel like a new person in Nitro for like a year and a half or 2 years sometimes if you don't go enough, right? In electric, you usually feel new till about 3 or 6 months.
Yeah. 3 months.
Because you've got all the car stuff, and it usually stays a little cleaner and nicer because of where you're running it. Nitro, you have no choice. You've got a wrench on your stuff, and when you don't, you still feel like a newbie because you're still trying to figure out how to wrench on it without ruining it. And then you throw the engine into things and so
tuning. Yeah, tuning. So this is designed to help new people, and hopefully you guys can share the information. So if you can, share this video feed now, make comments, ask questions, so that way people can see the activity, and somebody that maybe doesn't know about this live video that's going on right now, help them out. Hit the share button. That would be awesome to get more people watching, and hopefully we can reach more people, help more people, and progress their experience in RC racing. So the first topic I want to talk about is driving. So let's talk about what makes a good driver. First, what are the differences between, say, somebody that's done 10 scale for a long time and they jump into 8 scale? What are some of the differences in the driving styles and techniques? Because you do both. I've done 8 scale e-buggy, so I've definitely been on an 8 scale track. But the driving style of the two cars, definitely different.
Today, it's definitely different. When I started racing, I was running cars with knobs this tall on outdoor beat to heck tracks.
Yeah.
So for me, when I started, and 8 scale didn't even really exist then.
Yeah.
So I was essentially running 10 scale cars on tracks with not as big a holes because they're not as heavy, but today, most of the time you run a 10 scale car, you're running it on a fairly prepared surface, and you're usually using either really, really small nubs, or some type of bar type tire, or, to me, unfortunately, in a lot of instances, a slick.
Yeah.
I don't think tracks should progress to a slick. That's my personal opinion, but a lot of them do. And those tracks work great, and a lot of people have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
I think if your track's going to progress to there, throw down some AstroTurf and at least use pins.
Easy solution, eh?
It's just fun. It's just more fun. And to me, that's what this hobby is about. Okay. First and foremost, make it fun for what is the new to even intermediate driver.
Right.
And let the advanced guys figure out how to have fun their way. An advanced guy, usually the way they have fun is to get faster, right? The new and intermediate guys, their goal is to just make a lap without crashing.
Yeah.
And in 10 scale, one of the other differences between 10th and 8th scale is 10 scale tracks, because they aren't as beat up, it's a great way to learn the normal driving. Okay, yeah, this is right and left. Okay, well, when it's coming at me, oh, crud, it's still right and left. I got to think like I'm behind the wheel. When you're starting out fresh and you've never driven an RC car and you start with, let's say, an 8 scale nitro car, they're cool. They make noise. You watch them go around the track. You're like, yeah, I want that. Well, now they have to deal with learning how to drive, learning how to keep their engine running, learning about all the different tires that are needed, learning about going around or through all the different holes that exist, and then trying to not get killed when they walk out there to turn marshal their car for the 51st time in 3 laps. And the stand's taller, so now they got to walk down more stairs. So start with, if it were up to me, I would always have somebody start with 10 scale and progress to 8 scale, because then they get the basics down. And because 8 scale nitro, in my opinion, is a little bit more advanced, just from the standpoint of there's more things to consider.
Right.
There's more stuff going on.
Yes.
I'm not saying that 10 scale modified is not advanced. I'm definitely not saying that, because holy crow, watching those guys driving around with like Mach 10 on slicks for 58 laps in a row because they go so fast. That's how many laps they do. It's mind boggling to me. And it's awesome. It's awesome to watch, and it's awesome to watch those guys dice it out. But it's different watching a 45-minute Nitro A main from Nitro Challenge, right? So those are probably the bigger differences between the two. They both have a lot of similarities too. You're still the biggest problem I find with people that do Nitro versus electric is they'll go to a track and they'll spend their entire day, rather than just asking for help from somebody, they'll spend the entire day practicing trying to tune their engine. And they never, ever bother changing anything on the car.
Yeah.
Whereas when you go to an electric
I've
track,
seen it.
right, and
Yeah,
you
I've
go to
seen
an
it.
electric track, what do you do all day? You usually spend all day breaking in tires nowadays. And then past that, you tune on your car. You make
Yep.
small changes. You make minute changes to make the car more enjoyable for you to drive. You're not spending all day playing with your engine just so your engine stays running as a new person, right?
Yeah.
So that's probably the biggest thing I see between the two of them that, and I'd say the biggest thing on the nitro side that more people need to make sure that they're doing is if you see somebody and they're struggling, I don't care if they're a new person, an intermediate person, somebody you feel is advanced and has been to the track. There's one dude I go to rev with. I happen to see him. I've probably seen the guy 10 times. And he's sitting there, and the guy is just, you can tell he's over there, and he's shaking his head, and he's freaking out. He's completely lost. Like he wants to rip his engine out of his car and just throw away everything. And I walked, those are the times you walk up, hey, man, how's it going? What's going on? Let's feel this. Let's make sure everything's set up, and let's retune your engine for you and see. And all of a sudden, the guy's up there, and he's having a good time because that's what this is about. That's the similarity, right? We're all out there to have a good time. 10th or right? So
yeah, for sure. For me, when I came from, I only did 10 scale. Didn't have any interest in 8 scale. Then I worked for J Concepts. I was going to 8 scale events, so I got an e-buggy. I was like, okay, I gotta try this thing. Gotta get an e-buggy.
It's the next step, right? It's bigger and it's on the track.
Bigger. It's the same thing, but not nitro. But I'm not saying I'm a nitro guy. I'm not saying that at all. But the difference between 10 scale and 8 scale for me was the track size. Adapting to something that was 6, 7, 10 times bigger than my 10 scale track. You know what I mean? So being able to judge distance from the far corners, like way over there or way over there, like it was very hard to feel comfortable and drive with confidence and speed in the far sections for me. So like I know, and it's a hard thing to get used to every time I'm at an 8 scale track. If I'm watching and observing, it's obviously not a big deal. But when I'm actually driving and trying to control my car, trying to time my jumps.
Suddenly that lane that's 16 feet wide looks like it's about this wide.
I mean, P&B, for instance, when the car is far corners, man, I'm just like, I'm just kind of like, hoping and praying almost. I'm like, oh, geez, okay, I made it. Whew. And it's just a double.
Yeah. There used to be this one track in Southern California that towards the valley called it had a couple different names, but it was KZ Speedway, and they had a like 5th scale, quarter scale on-road course. So they thought that's how big they needed to make their off-road track. The 8 scale guys love their off-road track. For an 8 scale nitro car, the lap times were 1 minute and 5 seconds. And we tried to run one event. Now, this is way back when we had something called 10 scale gas truck.
You just triggered all these guys, man. You just triggered them all, man. Oh.
I did, but I tried running 10 scale gas truck on that track, and the thing's probably 140 feet, 150 feet deep, but it's like 250 or 300 feet wide. And you're looking at this little gas truck, and I swear it looks like RC Pro-Am on the computer out there. I'm like, you literally did like 4 laps. That was your qualifier. I was just like, okay, that track is too big. So I definitely understand that. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yikes!
So
4 laps, man. Okay. So the other thing I noticed when I came from 10 scale to 8 scale, e-buggy, is that the cars really have a lot of action, man. Like they are doing a lot of twisting and like if you hit the brakes, you can literally see the car go, whew, and then just come down. Like in 10 scale, you don't get such a dramatic effect in the air. I feel like in 8 scale, the e-buggies really whip hard, and you can actually crash your whip because you over whipped, you came back too early. Like there was a lot of motion going on.
Some of the good guys can literally make their car go upside down as far as a whip goes. They can come and do this and bring it right back and go down. It's rotational mass, right? And tires are heavier. That's the other thing that's really hard for a lot of people with 8 scale is 8 scale tires are really expensive. But
That
luckily, a
is
lot of
true.
these companies have come out with newer, longer wear tires. So, you can get a set of like S3 hole shots now, even at Thunder Alley, and you can literally run on them an entire day. We used to run there with M3 hole shots in 2 runs, and that for a normal person is just too expensive. So luckily, some of the tire manufacturers, Proline, or actually most all of them now, but I know Proline, aka J Concepts, they all have these longer wear compounds or more denser pin patterns that have made 8 scale. Yeah, it still costs a certain amount for the tires, but they last 2, 3, 4 times longer now. So that's certainly helped, I think, kind of revive part of 8 scale.
Yeah,
But that's definitely a difference between the two, is the price of the tires.
There's a trade-off, right? Like you can get a hard tire which is called what they call long wear, and the idea is trying to keep tires soft but be able to have it hard enough so that it lasts a long time on abrasive high wear tracks. And then the trade-off is a little less grip for something that is grippier, say like a super soft or a soft, and you trade off longevity.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's really, really good for like an entry-level person, and it's one of those things. So I'm always trying to look out for the entry-level guys, or the people starting it up, or the first people into 8 scale, or even the first people into 10 scale, because I still talk to a lot of 10 scale guys, and I still go to OCRC. I love that place, and so.
Bob Taylor, good point. Laughing gas is also a truth serum, right? What are you drinking there? Silver Bullet? What's that?
Diet Dr. Pepper Cherry? No, it's too early for beer for me. I mean, at least on a Thursday night. But it's funny. I've actually had laughing gas or truth serum as far as the dentist goes. This time I didn't have to have it, but I do try to tell the truth anyway, so it doesn't really affect me much.
Yeah, we don't try to lie all the time, it's just one of those things.
I'm just happy it's all staying in my mouth and not like
yeah. So there are definitely some differences, guys, between if you're coming from 10 scale going into 8 scale, expect that there's a bigger track, there's going to be a learning curve. Yeah. And don't be afraid. Like Ryan says, don't be afraid to ask. One of the biggest frustrations that I see, which is going to be into my second question, which is biggest errors you see new racers make and how to fix them.
I don't know. This is kind of 50-50, a twofer. So
okay. What you got?
Basic static adjustments. There's a lot more of them in an 8 scale. And I'll explain what those are.
I was going to say, can you...
Versus
buying
a cheap engine.
Ooh, so, interesting topic right here.
I hate to put it that way, but I've run a lot of engines, a lot of different engines. I work for a manufacturer, right? I work obviously for Horizon. A lot of people said, hey, try this engine. Hey, try that engine. Hey, use this. Ryan, you're going to use this for testing today. Ryan, we're going to run this one because so-and-so runs it. I've changed engines a lot. Some for me, some for Horizon, some for Dakota, in all fairness. I usually try to run what he's running so I can understand what he needs out of things a little bit better. So that's kind of the engine side of it. The static adjustments are setting your endpoints so you're not overthrowing servos and burning up servos. It's one of the things I see so often in 8 scale is burning up servos. People got to realize, in a 10 scale, if you don't set up the servos right and you overthrow the servos, you're usually running 6-7 minutes. You do run longer now with the batteries that we have, but on a typical practice, most people will pull their car off maybe 8 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. The typical nitro guy, even during a practice day on a practice run, will usually run 3 tanks. When they're up there, maybe 2. It depends who you are.
Yeah.
Unless you're just trying to tune. And 3 tanks, I mean, that you're like 25 or 30 minutes into a run, right? So the servos, and it's a bigger, heavier car, they're taking more of a brunt. There's natural heat buildup in there because you're in a confined space. So set your endpoints right for your throttle and your steering. Your throttle servo, I see so many people that are like, I never have a problem with my steering servo, but my brake servo always dies. and I watch them set it up, and the first time they hit the brakes, it goes and it throws so far past the spring compression that everything's twisting and turning and pushing out of the way. And it's like, well, yeah, you're going to fry servos, or it's pulling so far that they're trying to yank their carburetor barrel out of itself, So setting your endpoints on your servos so that you have your max throw at the right points, setting your camber, your droop, that stuff, those are kind of normal. Those are for everything. But on an 8 scale, the other biggest thing I see for beginners that they don't bother to set is brakes. Going forward is great. Stopping is even better.
Gotta have brakes.
The more you tune your brakes into how you drive, the more confident you're going to get in being able to hit your lines, and suddenly you'll be able to change your setups. The brake bias is huge. How you brake is huge, okay? A big difference between myself and Dakota, okay? Here's, and people don't think about this stuff, but I grew up in cars, you really didn't adjust all this stuff. My version of brakes is, that's it. There's my brakes. My finger goes clunk, and my radio goes clunk every time I hit the brakes. Dakota, and here's my throttle, right? Brakes, throttle, brakes. Here's Dakota, throttle, brakes, throttle, brakes. His whole finger can modulate. Mine, it can't, right? So somebody like a Dakota, he can set up that his max brake throw is truly max brake throw because he can modulate his brakes. Somebody like me, if I have max brake throw all the time, all I'm doing is locking up the tires and freaking going all over the place, right?
Yeah.
I have to set my brakes so that I find the hardest part on the track. I hit the brakes all the way. The car slows down properly the way I want it to. And that works fine for me for the rest of the track.
Yeah.
So for me, I know how to set my brakes, and then setting your brake bias really quick, guys. More front brake versus rear means the rear won't try to come around as much. You'll stop in a straight line. More rear versus front, the rear is going to tend to come around. If you want the car to arc a corner faster and you're on your brakes, put a little bit more rear brake bias. Instead of having to hit more brakes, it's just going to naturally pull the rear end around. So if you're hitting your brakes and your rear end's coming around and you don't want it to do that, take out some rear brake. And I spent a whole day at the track the other day. I actually went there to practice. I ran once. It was one of the best days ever because what I did half the day was help people with their statics stuff. Because then they went out and then they could concentrate on driving. They're not, something doesn't feel right. It's like it steers more right than left, and I don't understand that. And I hit the brakes and it locks up and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, yeah, no wonder you can't hit consistent lines because you're not even braking consistently. Right. So for me, and then on the engine side, I can't tell you how important it is to buy an engine, either that your buddies that they use them religiously and they know specifically how to tune them to make them work, or, and this is really, really, I promise, not meant to be a plug for anything in particular.
Oh no, here we go.
Or the two easiest to tune engines that exist out there today is an OS-based motor. There's a lot of companies that use an OS base. And that's not because we distribute them now, guys. It's just, heck, most of the OS-based stuff we don't even distribute. Or a Nova Rossi. Right, or a Nova Rossi. If you want to be able to tune an engine and go run and play with your toy car and have fun, those are the two bases that you use. A lot of other engines, a Reds engine, a Pico-based engine, those are good motors. You just have to be, in my opinion, an intermediate to advanced tuner to keep them running more consistently. And it's, again, nothing against those. They produce a different type of power. I mean, gosh, in the on-road world, you really can't beat a Pico-based motor, right? But I'm talking off-road because that's what really matters to me when it comes down to it. So, but they cost more. Yeah. And people are like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go buy this one over here, but that's the difference. It's because that company spent the time and energy to figure out what materials work best, to break it in right and break in your motor right. I mean, guys, there's a lot of people out there that will break in motors for you now that you literally get to put them into your car and you start them up. run a tank or two a little fat, and other than that, you tune it up and go. Like Adam Drake offers a break-in service, and he's a great guy, charges a great price, does a great service. There's a bunch of guys out there. I know Adam because he's local, and I worked with him for years, and I still race with him and his wife Rhonda. Great people. And again, not meant to plug them. Honestly, I break in my own engine, so that's not what this is about. I'm just saying, like, if you don't know how to break in an engine for a new person, because you asked about new people, get help. Either go to a shop that specializes in nitro that can help you break it in properly. But people are always like, oh, I'm breaking, that costs like $50 to get it done. Guess what? A gallon of fuel costs $50, and that's how much it takes to properly break in a nitro engine. One, you have to spend hours doing. Another one, some other dude spends the time doing. Like, so up to you.
Do you believe there's a difference between the oil bath break-in system and then naturally breaking your engine with a gallon of fuel?
I've been around a lot of people that have done both. Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate thing is I don't know that we're ever going to know. And I say that because you could go get 10 82 engines out of the package, break 5 of them in this way, break 5 of them in that way, and 3 of this one are going to be happy, and 2 of that one are going to be happy, and 3 of this one are, it's just, you're dealing with so many tight, specific tolerances that that's the thing though, even like quote unquote bad OS is still going to run you 6-7 gallons and still going to have power and be easy to tune, right? Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. So, I don't personally believe there's a performance difference between the two. I just believe there's certainly a convenience factor.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
If you don't know what you're doing when you're breaking in an engine, you don't know. Let's say you go to break in an engine and you don't know to heat up the head. Okay, that's a really important thing to breaking in an engine. Things like that. So one of the more complex sides of jumping into Nitro 8 scale.
Yeah, engines, period. So it's another factor. Yeah. I just had a great topic I was going to talk about, but I totally skipped it when you just made that last comment. But anyways, let's talk about steps to improve your racing, your racecraft, your skills, your performance. What do you think are some of the steps or some of the things people overlook, or some things that you feel like, if you want to be a good driver, you should do this?
Sorry, I'm going to my notes. I'm not checking text, just so everybody knows. I made some notes before this in case any of this is on here. So on 8 scale, practice is always going to be the first thing I'm always going to say.
Yep.
But if you're practicing with a car that you or me couldn't pick up and drive around a track, it's not going to help. So for a new person, the first thing I do is, if you're driving and you're just having a heck of a time getting around the track, guys, we wear these shirts for a reason. It's not because, I want people to buy TLR. TLR, go buy TLR. No, I wear this so that hey, I'm a TLR guy. So if you got a TLR car, honestly, with me, if you have any car, I don't really care if it's a TLR, but we wear these shirts so that people know that if you're struggling at all and you're not having fun, come up to us and have us look at it. Have us try to drive it. I can tell you within 5 seconds of trying to drive a car if it should be okay for you, or there's like 53 things we need to change here.
Sometimes more.
Right. And it's not because we're right or wrong or anything like that. It's because we've done it enough that we have the experience that we can hopefully change enough stuff quick enough for you, or find the things that could be basic setup things that might be a little off. Maybe your servo is only throwing 50% and you're trying to tune your engine with the carburetor not sliding all the way out. How do I know? Maybe you've got a bent shock shaft and you've been trying to adjust your ride height for days and it's just not working out for you. Maybe but we've done it so long that we know to look for that stuff. And it's more, this is what I do. I not only do this for a living, I do this for a hobby. I've been doing this since I was 7 years old. I just turned 44. That's a while.
Long
and it's not
time.
The longest break I've ever taken is like 6 weeks. And that's almost forced. Okay.
So you've been continuously in the hobby doing racing.
I have done.
Wow. I was gone for 10 years.
Off-road. I've done gearbox on-road. When you get really desperate, go try to race your off-road car on-road in a parking lot, because that used to be a class. I've raced pan cars on a parking lot track. There's a lesson in throttle control for you. Oof. I've raced 8-scale four-wheel drive nitro cars. Ron Paris taught me how to tune engines.
Wow.
That's how long I've been doing this. Like what a lot of people would consider one of the masters. I don't remember half of it, I'll be honest. I was really young, but
I was 6 years old.
Right? I was like 12 or 13 by that point.
Wow.
I've done oval. I've done almost every form of off-road that exists. So there's something that comes, there's a little bit of experience that comes with all that.
Yeah. And
the reason I can still do this and still have fun is because the way I have fun today is to try to help other people. I'm old. I'm going to drive as fast as I drive. I could go practice for 5 weeks in a row every single day and probably get a tenth of a second, if I was lucky, out of it over that amount of time, right? But if I can go and I can help a guy run 3 laps in a row without crashing when he was crashing 3 times a lap by the end of a day, that's a total win for me.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah, it totally is, man.
That's what it's about.
Yep. Yeah, people always ask, "Are you racing?" I'm like, "Nah." They're like, "Dude, why don't you race?" And I'm like, "Well, like sometimes I enjoy just watching and helping people, man, being a part of their racing in a different way. Like, I know if I race, I want to be competitive, and I'll put all this effort into something that I'm not very practiced up in, you know what I mean? So it's just an experience thing for me. And I do like racing. I do like the experience of driving on the track that, a big race is at. But at the same time, I know that that inhibits my time that I get to spend with other drivers, and racers and helping and watching, and especially the young guys, the Mason Fuller guys, the Lee Setzer guys. That speed where they're relying and they're looking for help. They're looking to some way keep up with Cavalieri and Mayfield and Spencer and Dakota. They're looking for a way to get there, and it's always fun. Yeah, and it's always fun to
absolutely believe all of those guys can, and
they have.
Sometimes I call them kids, and I know hopefully they're watching or they will watch this. I don't mean it in any negative way.
Yeah, no, it's. I say
know you're not. I know you're not kids. I know you're young adults and becoming adults, and even in some cases could probably go have a drink with me. Even though I call you a kid, it's definitely not. It's a term of endearment. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
I'd say second to those two things. Practice really is. Practice is going to be better than any hop-up you go buy. So if your hop-up costs $30 and that's 3 days of practice on the track, go spend the 3 days of practice on the track. If that's your budget. I grew up on a budget. I'm still on a budget. Every day I don't get to go do this. I don't have the money to do it. And that's how I always was. So, and if you need something, ask somebody. I'm not saying go up and beg around the pits or anything, but if you've had a bad day and you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did this. I'm going to have to go home now. I paid for my practice already. Guys, if you need a shock shaft or you need a front arm or something like that, usually we have an extra one. And most of the time, unless it's the 18th time you've come up to us in a week, we're probably going to be okay with it,
Yeah,
But
if you're up there 18 times, you're probably going to get a hand-me-down part that came off a car that's been, you still usable, but it's been
well,
used. Okay,
then you're going to
or
get
help you
forced
out.
help. Then it's you know what? Why don't you bring your car over? We're going to take a look at it right now. See why you keep crashing here. Hold on.
Let me rebuild this thing for you, man. I got you,
Right.
bro.
It's time.
Obviously, if time and money wasn't a thing, we would do that all day long. But obviously, we can't be rebuilding everybody's cars at the track. We would never have any time. All right, so Barry Baker, what is a AXT? Wait, and
Just
guessed. Wait, 8XT?
It's my trophy. It's mine. I have one.
See, you guys don't even know if he's even joking. What if he's just joking? It's not a real 8XT. It's just the old truck.
He could be really mean and grab the new one. Same.
All right. So let's recap the driving stuff. How to get better performance. One, notice that if you're coming from 10 scale or new, adapt to the track sizes, overcome some of the challenges that you may be used to from 10 scale and get into 8 scale, learn it as completely new. That was my advice. The biggest errors, don't buy a cheap motor. You'll have a ton more frustration trying to get that to work. Get a quality motor to start with. That is going to be your bread and butter. If you can't finish the race, you're not going to finish the race.
You're just not going to have fun.
It's not going to be fun. Yeah, so quality motor is very important because that keeps you going around the track. Learn to tune it, and if you don't know, ask for help. And the last thing is the step to improve the racing results. Practice obviously is number one. Can't replace practice. And, ask for help, right?
Yeah, I mean, guys, if you don't know, I mean, like, Dakota practices like 3 times a week, I think, these days. And then he'll go club race on top of that, right? So it's like those guys practice to keep their skills sharp. They used to practice to get faster.
Yeah.
Now they practice to either learn setup stuff or to keep their skills sharp.
Or they're testing something.
Need practice, right? If they need practice, it's like, why wouldn't I need practice or Thomas need practice, right?
Yeah.
Or you.
You got to put in that track time. There is
Jose Alvarado. Why wouldn't you need practice, Jose?
Are you telling me Jose don't? He's a regional team manager, man. He's got to set a good example, Jose. Come on.
He races. He races lots. He likes to race.
Yeah. He races and helps everybody. That's what I've noticed, man. Yeah.
He does.
So so that's the basics of how to kind of improve from a driving standpoint. Was really actually make sure you got quality gear and then go practice. Have fun, go practice, learn your equipment, and learn how to get it working
and
properly.
Don't be afraid to go out on the track. I mean, the first thing, especially if you're having trouble with something, and you're like, man, why am I having so much trouble with this? Walk out on the track and look at the section. You might walk over there and be like, oh my gosh, there's a 3-foot hole right here that you can't see, and go walk out there and look. Go walk out there and look, plan a line, and then spend the next 10 minutes hitting that line. Whether it's the right line or a wrong line, hit it. So that way hey, I can hit a line. Now, how can I hit that line faster, or how can I change my line up to go faster, right? So hit your line.
And with nitro, man, or 8-scale tracks in general, your line usually changes. So you don't always stick to that line. Yeah, so don't always stick to that line thinking that's the fastest way around. Sometimes you have to explore. But what Ryan is saying is, if you can't hit the line consistently, you can't really change the line. You're kind of guessing every time you go through, and that is just kind of basically just lucking, basing a lot of stuff on luck. I'm just going to go through wherever I go through, I end out, and that's usually not the fast line. Usually the fast line is figuring out, practicing and being confident that you can attack the turn, and your car can get in and out of that turn without getting bounced around or caused you to lose time or spin out.
Yep.
So
And the other biggest mistake I see new people do is they watch the local fast guy go around the track, and they're getting 6 inches off of almost every pipe, right? And then I see new people go out there and like, I should be able to be this close to the pipe. Don't worry about that part yet. Practice, your line should be staying right exactly between every single pipe. So the very first thing you got to figure out is how to stay in the very center of the lane. Once you figure that out and you can stay in that line, and you can do that for 2, 3, 4 tanks, 2, 3, 4 battery packs, if you're Thomas and you run e-buggy, stay in the middle of the lane till you get that down. Then you can start trying to go closer, because it sucks to be walking up and down the stand and going into marshal in your car, because on practice days, people suck at going out and helping you turn a car over.
Especially that's why I don't do 8 skill, man, because I got to go out and corner my car. It's so far, such a long walk.
Yep, big track.
No, it's not. It's just usually I'm working while I'm racing. That's usually why I can't really just do nitro. I would love to, but I'm usually working at the events and not be able to race and participate. So it's not by choice. Not because it's not because I dislike nitro 8 skill. Not at all. All right. So there was a question from Matt Leoin about brakes. How do you like set your brakes? Like, how do you know how much is too much? How much is this? Is like, okay, this is enough. Like that stop power.
Some of it's experience, and honestly, some of it's on track tuning, right? And so here's my 2-minute version of how I set up brakes. Okay. First thing I do is I go in and I hit the brakes on my radio. I go to the endpoint adjustment on my radio, and I adjust it so that I fully collapse the spring on the throttle. So most people have a spring there. When you hit brakes, it collapses the spring. You don't want it to go past that, right? So that's assuming I set my neutral point, right? This is why you never adjust trim in throttle, because then you're messing up everything. That's something else you learn in nitros. You don't adjust your throttle trim because you're messing up where your brake point is. You're messing up so many things, it's not worth adjusting. That's not how you keep your engine running.
Sub trim's okay.
Yeah, sub trim's fine. Yeah. That's how you find the center, right? So you find your center. I set my brake EPA with my brake rate at 100% on the radio, okay? This is, of course, setting up all the brakes on the car from the manual, okay? Then I go to my car and I make sure that when I'm pushing on my brake, okay, when I'm barely getting into my brake, I can feel the pads start to engage already, okay? And the way that you do that is you either slide the little collet over so that it's pulling sooner, or you turn a little knob, usually, depending on what kind of car you have.
Yeah, fine tuning.
Right. And then I go in and I jab full brake, and while I'm holding full brake, I try to turn the front tires. Okay. And then I take the brake rate, which is usually your thumb knob, a thumb little switch on your radio, and I turn my brake rate down to when I'm pushing full on the brake, I can just start to roll the front tires. They move. I'm not like trying to turn the whole car over, right? They're moving. Okay. Then that's my initial brake end point. Now I should be somewhere between 50 and 85% on my brake rate. So I have adjustment I can make on the track now. Okay. And then I adjust my rear bias off of what I did on the front. So I like more front brake than rear. So if my front brake is rolling like this, I want my rear brake to be like this. And I will always turn the front tires forward and the rear tires backward. It just is what it is. It's how I learned how to do it. I don't know why. I don't know that it's better or worse, but
I didn't know there were different directions.
Yeah, I do that, and it has to do with the way the brake cams engage and stuff like that. So that's what I was told from one of the engineers. I was just like, cool, fine, I'll do it that way. So for me, I run about 70-30, sometimes about 65-35, depending on the track. So I'll adjust my rear brakes to that. And then That's my static adjustment for brakes. Then I go on the track and I go to the place that I need the most brakes, which is usually the end of the straight for me, unless it's a sweeper at the end of the straight and I'm just rolling around it. So I'll go to the next place that I need the most brakes, and I will go full pin in there and I will stab my brakes. And if my car spun or locked up and went sideways, I'll start turning the brake rate down. If it went way further than I thought it should go, I'll turn the brake rate up a couple. And that's my brake. But that last step where I'm adjusting my brake rate to the track, I do every single time I get on the track. And the reason for that is because one time there might be more moisture in the track than another. It could be nighttime versus daytime. I may have changed tires and suddenly one has either more brake traction, which is the same thing as forward grip, or one has less. But every single time I adjust my brake rate during warm up. That's what, and everybody's always like, you're stopping on the track. It's like, oh, I pulled over. Don't go outside. Sorry. But you also don't have to stop. That's why it's on your thumb.
Yeah.
But and that way, because brakes are just as important and just as important to getting fast lap times.
Yeah.
As throttle is.
Yeah.
You know, it just is. So if you're looping out every time you're hitting your brakes aren't right. That's all I'm going to say.
Your brakes or your tires, one of the two.
Right. Exactly.
So at least you know which two problems it could be. There's only two.
Right.
You're looping out, your brakes are set wrong, or your tires are totally wrong. So, yeah. All right. So that is the driving part. Let's move into setup. Pretty basic stuff right here with setup. I was thinking maybe, what are the keys to having a dialed car? People always I always feel like people are looking for one. So they're always picking one thing, right? So they're always trying to tune maybe more steering, or maybe I need more grip, but what are they really trying to do overall? What are they trying to accomplish? Like a balance.
Yeah, well, so first and foremost, I will say about setup is many moons ago, we did used to include a setup guide, is what we called it, with what were low-C vehicles or team low-C vehicles in the past. From the 8XT on, any new release you see that's a TLR vehicle will start to include a setup guide. It is a guide specific to that vehicle, to what we feel a specific change does to it. Okay, every vehicle is a little bit different. An 8 scale tunes different than a 10 scale. A 4-wheel drive tunes different than a 2-wheel drive, yada, yada, yada. Some are the same. Some are slightly different.
Yeah.
So I'll say that. And then to answer your question, for me, my number one and number two for setup is tires, ride height.
Wow.
So one, you got to choose the right tire. If you have the wrong tire on your car, it doesn't matter what else you try to change. You're not going to feel it. Even somebody like me, I can put on the wrong tire and I won't feel 5 different changes. And then I'll put on the right and it's like, whoa, okay, that was definitely the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So find the right tire. And if you're new, you can do that by asking the other people, hey, what tire are you running right now? And don't forget to ask, hey, what tire are you running right now? And if they say, I'm running X3 Electroshots, I would ask them, do you like that tire? There were instances it was a really good tire, but that's a tire that's not made anymore, right? For instance, because they didn't sell a lot of them. There was some instances I used those. I really like an X3 Electroshot at DNC 3 years ago. It was awesome. It was a great tire for trucking. But don't forget to ask, hey, what tire are you running? Oh, great. Is it working well for you? Or do you like that? Or do you think there's another tire you'd prefer right now? Because sometimes some people will practice on a tire and it might not be the tire they want to be running because either they're running low on the one they want to be running or they forgot them.
Or they're just trying another tire
to
see what happens.
Or they're just trying another tire. So don't be afraid to ask follow-up questions. If somebody gets mad, they're having a bad day. It's not your fault. Go find somebody else to ask.
Nobody should get mad. You know what I mean? I don't think anybody's going to get mad.
Half the guys out there will be like, did you want to try them? I mean, like for me, usually if it's a new person and they're like, oh, what are you running? I'm like, oh, I'm running these. They're like, oh, okay, let me go get some from the shop. It's like, whoa, hold on. Why don't you put this on your car for a tank? and see if you like them, and then you can go buy them. Because I don't want, again, I grew up on a budget. I want people to know that, okay, I'm going to go spend 75 or 80 bucks on tires and rims and glue and whatever it takes. I want them to know that it's going to work for them, But tires, for sure, is always number one with our hobby everywhere. Electric, nitro, everything. And it's unfortunate that it's that way, but it is that way. So
yeah.
I'm being honest about it. And then for me, with the preface that I've made sure everything else is working properly, meaning I don't have a bent hinge pin, I don't have a twisted chassis, I don't have a bent shock tower, I don't have a cracked knuckle, so on and so forth. There's nothing obviously wrong with the car. The next thing I mess with is ride height for a couple reasons. One, it's really easy. I can change it as I'm driving around the track. I can walk down the stand, give it a little thing, let it go. Or if I'm out there pitting for somebody, I can watch the car and go, oh, their whole car needs to be a little higher or a little lower, or the back end needs to come up or the front end needs to go down. And I've been trying to teach some of the guys recently about how easy it is to adjust some of those things and what to look for when you want to adjust it at the track. Because it's not really... The thing behind that, the caveat that I want to state is a quarter of a turn on a shock collar on an 8-scale car can literally mean the difference between it feeling right and feeling wrong. What that also means is that you have to set it up first to know where you started. So you got to set all the static stuff. You got to set the ride height properly. If you pull the car off the track and you set the ride height and it's been 26, let's say, or 27, let's use 27 because it's a pretty normal number, all day long. The reason we check our ride height every single time is because if it's been 27 all day long and all of a sudden we drop it and it's at 24, there's a problem somewhere. It's the quickest and easiest way to tell that either, man, I sure got a whole bunch of dirt and grime somewhere, which is very rare. We've figured out ways to keep things a bit more free, or a hinge pin's bent, something's binding,
shock shaft's bent, yeah. There's
somebody
maybe
screwed up their shock
damage.
collar. Right. Yeah. Something's right, exactly. So that's why I say ride height. It's not necessarily, ride height, it can make the world better, but it's a really quick way to know if something's busted or bent or damaged. And it's a really quick tuning aid on the track to, I don't know, give you a little bit more grip coming out of a corner. For a guy that grabs the throttle real hard coming out of a corner and the tail end's whipping around on you a bunch, give it a quarter turn down, raise the rear end a little bit. It's going to support the rear end. The rear end's not going to bounce off the ground probably. And because if you're in the right area of the ride height, that quarter turn is literally going to hold it up enough and change the front to rear balance of the chassis enough that now you can grab the throttle a lot harder coming out of a turn. No problem. And all that took was a whoop. I didn't need to go buy anything. I didn't need to try to change my shock oil or my hub position, I didn't have to go chasing a bunch, and that's all it was.
Ryan, what do you normally start when you get to a new track? What do you normally set the ride height the first time you go out?
27 flat. On my 8X, it is 27 flat on Proline tires.
Okay.
And I only say that because different tires are different diameters, usually because either the foam in them or they've got a different carcass structure. And it just is what it is. Like on the Truggy, for instance, the 8XT that I run, it were,
Hey, let me show you my AXT because I got it over here.
Right here.
Like I just got to dig it out. It's over here.
For instance, the Proline setup is a millimeter lower ride height than the J Concepts, because a lot of people don't realize that ride height isn't really about how far you are necessarily on or off the ground. It usually has to do with where your suspension points are and what all is going on. And a J Concepts tire is slightly taller than a Proline tire. So to get them at the same way that when I started racing, my rear ride height is bones level. Oh, it's just below bones level.
Yeah.
It's just below bones level.
That was the best.
That's what we put on the setup sheet, right?
I just drop the car. I look at the back end. It just goes.
It's good, dude.
bones level, baby, and that's what we ran. That's it.
I mean, for
Easy.
instance, that's why we put like the tire brand on a setup sheet. It's not because, well, plus we wanted to know at that time what tire worked well, usually, right? But like my setup sheet's different than Dakota's. Well, one, we're two different drivers, but we use different brand tires. So, and I know I measured the diameter of his tires before they went on his car because I did all the initial testing on the truck because that's just my job. And I wanted to translate it to what I felt was a good starting point for him. And so I measured the diameter of his tires because I was looking at him like, it just looks different. And sure enough, it ended up being 1 millimeter ride height different. And then his car handled properly because we tried it at the ride height I said, and it just doesn't look right around the track. And you'd be surprised. A millimeter can make a big difference in especially total chassis height up and down. You know, if a car's too low and the chassis is going through all the bumps and it keeps bouncing off the chassis instead of the suspension going through everything, you know, sometimes a quarter turn of the whole car moving up, suddenly the chassis is not hitting everything. The shocks are doing everything. And you're like, oh my God, I got so much grip. It's the strangest thing ever. But until you experience it, until you test it and try, you're just never going to know. So ride height. I know it sounds silly, and everybody's got their little thing, but
they do. They do.
Know if something's broken, and I use it to try to figure out, because it also helps you with balance. If you end up with a car that handles well and is at like 29, 25, the car's not balanced.
Yeah.
Just straight up. It's something. I mean, our old Truggy, we used to have to run, like, depending on the track, we were between 3 and 6 millimeters lower in the front than the rear. Because the thing didn't steer for crud.
Rake.
Right.
Tons of rake.
That's just how you had to run it to make it work right or feel right going around the track. And the funny thing is, you'd look at it going around the track, it looked level. But you knew from a suspension load perspective, and especially if you put it on scales, you're like, wow, this is going to work. Okay, whatever.
Balance is a big thing, you know, like I think a lot of people don't really tune in terms of balance. They tune in terms of lap times. So what they're looking for, if their lap time's slow, they go, I'm 4/10 off fast lap. I'm like, okay, I need more steering. You know, that's like the first thing they think is, I need more steering. So they put more steering in. Next thing you know, the car becomes very hard to drive. They're making a lot of mistakes. They're jumping off the track. They're flipping, you know, all over the place. So it's like, So let's talk about balance real quick.
Yeah, well, balance is one thing we've been really trying to concentrate on a lot with the 8X in the past 6, 8, 10 months. Dakota and I have these debriefings every so often. It's like, okay, Dakota, what do you want out of the car? What do you want? It's like, I want this. I want that. You know, and with the old car, it was like, I want more steering. I want more steering. I want more steering. At least he doesn't say that now. Yeah, it's always a new thing. It's a new day. So with this car,
new car, new things.
I want to just be able to pick it up and drive around the track. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, well, I get this rear end wiggle sometimes, and this happens, and it feels like the front just grabs and pulls, but the rear doesn't support. It's like, okay, so you don't like the front end and the rear end fighting. Well, yeah. Okay, so we need to balance the car a bit better for you.
Yeah.
Okay. I get it. That I can understand. It's like, all right. So I went to the track 3 days a week for 6 weeks, 7 weeks straight. And I went to Revelation. And Revelation is a track in Southern California here. It's been around a long time, changed owners a few times. Garen is the owner now today. Really, really nice guy. Really, really helpful for folks. The track isn't known as the funnest place to run. And it's got this really, you can't control really the dirt that you have unless you bring in, and dirt's really expensive. So it's got this silty layer, and people have trouble with it and have trouble tuning to it. But if there is a place and you want to get the balance of a car better, there is no better track. I can take a car that I have found balance at Revelation, and I can drive it at any other track that exists.
Why is it dry, or is it loose, or is it like challenging in that way?
Yeah. Okay. It goes from dry and sandy to dusty with a hard pack layer to loose crap and it will do it the entire day. And if you don't have a car that's balanced, you will very quickly learn that's not. And so balance is huge, and balance could be anything for anybody. I mean, it could be ride height for somebody. It could be hub position is a big one for a lot of people. So our rear hub, and I'll use the aluminum one, for instance, has 3 different heights. It can move forward and back 3 different millimeters. You can have 3 different rear drive shafts in it. And one of the drive shafts has 3 different pin positions in it. And there's 8 mounting holes for the camber rod in there. And that's just on the hub side. Put 3 different hexes on it. Okay.
Oh my.
So people can get lost very quickly. If you don't know what moving this way versus moving this way does, and you don't know what moving the camber link positions does, because people look at it like, oh, well, I moved the camber link and now my tires do this. Well, no, yeah, they do that. So they adjust your camber gain, but they adjust your roll center a bunch, and they adjust the pressure on the tire a bunch. And there's a lot of stuff that just changing the camber link does, right?
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time trying any asinine thing that I could think of just to see what it did. I spent an entire day at the track changing front A and B pill positions. An entire day. And let me tell you something about front pills that I learned. It can go from being good, better, awesome, I'm going to shoot myself. It is amazing how fast you can get out of place with the balance with your front pill position.
Wow. And
some people, they'll put somebody's entire setup. They'll take the hours to put somebody's entire setup on a car and not change the front pills, for instance.
Yeah.
If you're going to put somebody's setup on a car, put the setup on the car. The whole thing. Measure the millimeters, put the whole setup on the car. And then the next thing, static setup. I can't begin to tell you how often I see this. It's not really mentioned a lot of places, but it is like a no-no in the industry. I don't know how many of you people on your real car like to drive down the street with your steering wheel like this and expect your car to turn properly both ways. You really want it to drive like this. Statically, your camber links for your steering are always the exact same length.
Yeah.
You do not, it's going a little bit to the right. Let me align it by changing the length of one longer and one shorter, right? These are always the same length.
Yep.
You adjust the center position by the way that the servo horn is turned. So, sorry, I forgot to mention that, but I see it all the time. All the time. So I want to put that out there. Please don't do that, guys.
All right, so let's get into shocks a little bit with 8-scale. I feel like there's lots going on with 8-scale shocks. You got oils, you got different, I feel like there's no definitive piston.
There is no end to the amount of changes you can make to a shock.
Yeah, so there's tons of pistons, tapered pistons, up, down, this, that. You got bladders, emulsions, What's the breakdown on the shocks, do you think? Like a quick
so breakdown. Off the top of my head, we make 12 different 8-scale pistons. Not to confuse everybody. We make 2 different shock shaft sizes. We obviously make a bunch of different springs, and a lot of people use other brand springs on their cars. And then you can screw up all kinds of things like ride height and droop and yada, yada, yada. Okay?
Yeah.
And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types of seal methods out there that I can think of, right? Because you've got emulsion, regular bladder, reinforced bladder, fast race caps, and then you can run what's called vented, which is a standard bladder with the screw removed, right? So people can get lost in shocks forever.
Tons, man. I feel like...
For instance, if you take my DNC setup and you take the setup I posted on my Facebook page 520, so a month ago, let's say, those two cars, what I call the base setup, so where the hub is in relation forward to backward, where the link location is,
Yeah.
the chassis brace that's used, the ride heights, the blah, blah, blah. All that stuff is nearly the same. Actually, I think all of it's the same. We made some minor revisions to it recently, but the only thing that's different between those two is a completely different shock package. I don't ever stop trying things, and if somebody says, hey, we should try this, guess what I'm doing? I mean, the other day, I took my engine mount. I had some stupid, I don't know why I thought of it, and I took my one-piece engine mount that has that little nub sticking off of it, and I turned it around in the car and drilled another hole in my chassis so the little nub was going backwards to see what adding rear chassis support would do, just because I was curious. But that's my job, right? But those two setups, for instance, drive like almost completely different. And it's just the shocks that are different. A couple of things I will talk about the 8X specifically that we've learned fairly recently, okay? And I will put out, for now, as the 8X sits today, I pretty much will use a tapered front and rear piston for the rest of its existence. For the rest of the 8X as it sits today's existence. Right. Who knows what's going to come in a 2.0 or whatnot. Yeah. I mean, I do, but whatever. Or at least I hope. But like we used to play with, this one was flat and this one was tapered, and these two, they were all flat and this and that. We tried MIP pistons and we tried associated pistons even in our car. Ooh, I'm not supposed to say that, but they have this cool tapered like drill thing. Yeah. And it does something different. I literally have 60 different pistons in my box. I've got brass ones and black ones and white ones and blue ones. And I've tried so many different pistons. I can tell you as it is today, I will use a TLR piston and a TLR shock. There's something about the material. It's all been designed together. There's a certain amount of blow by. It's very specific to how it feels naturally smooth with our piston. That's the other thing when it comes to shocks. Emulsions versus a bladder. Okay.
Yep. That's a big difference, I feel like. With the
it's a pretty big difference. An emulsion shock, an emulsion shock's always going to feel lighter to most people statically than a bladder shock. So usually people will go up in oil when they go from bladder to emulsion. It feels a little bit different on the track sometimes, but in the pits, it is what it is. I feel like 95% of the human race could build an emulsion shock, especially now that we have bleeder screws and stuff. I mean, in the past, I definitely would not have said that. Yeah. But I feel like 95% of people can build one of those right. I feel like about 30% of the population could probably build a bladder shock properly. And about 5% of the people could build a fast race shock properly. It is one of the reasons I don't recommend the fast race shock caps, and it's not a personal preference. It's I've done this for however many years, and for me to get the two rear shocks to feel the same, I had to bleed it and rebleed it 4 times. And every single person I've talked to that uses those caps are like, yeah, the least amount of times I've ever done it in is 2. And most people starting out won't do it more than 1. So I'm not going to recommend something to the common public that I feel is not conducive to a fun environment. Okay. Before Kevin left, we did a bunch of videos and stuff on, I did a bunch of videos with him on building an emulsion shock, building a bladder shock, how to build it to different deadness types, the reason you use the different types of shocks, all of that. The series never came out. We put out like the first little clip of it, and then the rest of it never came out. And that's okay. We can, maybe you and I can get together at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
This way, and we can do that. But
I'm into that.
So a bladder shock, guys, will usually, the reason it's a bladder shock, there's no air in it. It'll come up and it'll help. Essentially, it's almost like having an internal spring that pushes things back down, right? So as it comes up, it kind of builds pressure and it helps it to get it to go back down. Yep. It's typically used for either wanting a faster reacting vehicle, meaning you want a car to change directions faster, or you've got a track with what I would say would be medium rounded holes, because it'll help slowly move the tire in and out of the holes. Okay. If you get to bigger, sharper holes, choppy holes.
Yep.
Personally, most people I've found that use an emulsion shock are usually happier.
Yeah.
An emulsion shock will typically feel like you have more side bite versus a bladder shock. It's actually one of the things, it's probably the best thing that you feel in a fast race shock, because it's such a stiff bladder. It feels like you have 100% forward bite. It's one of the reasons we made the reinforced bladder. The reinforced bladder is almost the forward bite of a fast race cap, but it's way easier to build, and it's got a ton of side bite to it still. Like when the reinforced bladder is what Dakota actually prefers in his 8X right now, is his base setup. The setup you saw for DMC that we put out was his main setup.
Yep.
And so in the main, we went to emulsion because the bumps, we all talked about it, and the bumps were deep and sharp. And anytime you get to that, you're not trying to get the tire down. You're trying to actually get the car to float over the sharpness. Kind of like if you were trying to go through a bunch of whoops. It's always going to go through whoops better because it tries to stay on top, because the shocks almost go up and almost try to stay in one spot versus continue to get pushed down, right? So for what it's worth, that's the quick 2-cent version on more
just 2 cents, Betty. Just 2-cent version.
Oh, right? Dude, you literally could have an entire 2-hour session on shocks.
Yeah,
I mean, it's insane. But I will say to most people, when we put out these setups, guys, we're not putting them out because, hey, I want you to use my setup. I only put out setups that I feel is going to make it more fun for people. Like Bob James, nicest guy you'll ever meet. He's a sportsman driver, I'd say, but super, super duper helpful. He'll help anybody. I mean, he is on our team. Great guy. He brought his DNC car, which we specifically worked with him on to make it better, and made him pretty happy by the end of DNC to go around the track. He brought it as it was, rebuilt, of course, because he's very good about that, to Thunder Alley. And then he built his second car, because he's always had one car for 40 plus and one car for sportsman. He built his second car with the latest setup I put out. And it's a setup. I usually work with people. Lately, I've been working with Don Winkmoller a lot on setups for like us normal folk. For Dakota, it's different. And I will say that as far as setups go, people, Dakota setup's a great setup if you drive like Dakota.
Yes.
So usually the setups I put out are going to be more for what I call us normal folk. But he brought 2 cars, and I spent a half a day at Thunder Alley working on his old car with him, adjusting the static stuff, getting his brakes right, getting him going around the track. And he was like, man, my car feels really good. Thanks, Ryan. And then he brought out his second car, which was the new setup. And it's not a lot different. It's literally mostly shock package. I think there's some different, I think we have one standard hexes instead of 1 mil hexes on it. And he brought that out. He didn't even have the right rear link on it. Shame on you, Bob, but I already got on him about that. And we fixed the link, and it got even better. And we hadn't even played with his brakes too much yet, and then really adjusted his engine yet or anything. It was like 2 different human beings going around the track. He had this huge grin on his face, and he's pulling the throttle hard everywhere, and he's burning laps around the track. And he came off the stand, he's chuckling and laughing. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I tried it. Guys, we put out the setups for people to try. You don't have to love them. I'm okay with that. Or if you like part of what it does and you don't like part of what it does, always feel free to let me know what you don't like, and we're going to try to help you make it better. But we don't spend hours and hours and hours and days working on some of this stuff. Just, I don't care about selling somebody some other pistons. I'll be honest with you. If it was the same piston setup, I would have been happier, but it wasn't. It worked better with this one. Trying to explain to people the differences between, somebody got to me the other day and they're like, no, my pistons, they work great. It's 7.6 millimeters total diameter of opening versus 7.8, which is what you run, and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, dude, I love you, man, but unless you truly know physics and fluid dynamics, that is not how fluids work. You can have a piston that is 1.5 times 5, and what is that? 7.5? And you could have a piston that's 4 1.4 holes and 1 2-millimeter hole, I think, maybe 1.9. I don't know what that works out to. They're going to work completely different. One takes a thicker oil and it's going to blow through it faster, so it tends to drive different. So a bigger hold piston with thicker oil is going to tend to keep the car flatter. Thinner oil with a smaller hold piston is going to tend to let the car roll around a little bit more. So depending on how you want the car to drive, Dakota likes his car to roll into the turns a little bit more. He likes to see that. It helps him set up a turn. That's why Dakota uses a 8-hole by 1.2 piston. And trust me, I made him try 5 different shock packages that I'd come up with for him for testing, all back to back to back. And then on top of that, I made him try all the different variations of emulsion bladder, reinforced bladder, fast race caps, blah, blah, blah. And then we tried TLR and Mugen springs, and because Mugen springs for some people work really well on our car. And I'm not going to complain about that. I don't care if you're using a Mugen spring, and you're not offending me in any way. If they work better for you, great. But if you just put them on because you saw them on some setup and you didn't try both, shame on you. Because somebody like me, I like the Evo spring because for me, it keeps me, the reason an Evo spring for me feels the same as a Mugen spring for Dakota is because the car versus the track at the speed I go, the Evo spring keeps me at 28 millimeters, let's say. The Mugen spring with how fast Dakota goes keeps him at 28 millimeters. If he uses an Evo spring, his car's like up here and he doesn't like it. Understandably so. They're a different frequency. It's part of how it works. Sorry.
Yeah.
You asked.
Nope, no worries, man. Like you said, we can go and talk about shocks all day long, different packages, different combinations, pluses and minus. That's just like Ryan said, that's the dirty version right there. Now we're going to talk the next thing, which is I think a lot of people don't really have a good grasp on is diff and diff oils. 3 diffs in the car. They change the car dramatically. You could be out to lunch or you could be super dialed. So let's talk about the diffs, HD case options, diff oil, thick, rear, front, mid, rear. What's the lowdown on diffs, Ryan?
I'm like starting to film my whole face again. It's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Yes. See, it's the little things in life. So diff oils and diffs in general.
Yeah.
So some things to understand is, let's start out mechanically. Okay, so we'll start out with mechanical differences. So there's different out drives, different pins, different ring gears, different cases. We got a lot of different stuff. I'm trying to include more of what the team guys use, even from a diff perspective now, moving forward in the cars. I can't say it's always going to be perfect because everybody doesn't necessarily use everything. But like, for instance, the question I got the other day was, oh, the aluminum diff pins, how big of a difference do they make, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, well, I have a guy telling me, it's this many grams difference, and from a rotational force, it doesn't make that big of a difference. Well, when you start to think about it, and I think there are 4 grams difference between them. So you got 12 grams a car, and all 3 of them are spinning at the same rate. You're basically, not only are you talking about the weight of moving them, which helps you with fuel mileage, okay? Not a ton, because it is around an axis, right? But it's going to help you with fuel mileage. It's going to help you with acceleration. But the reality is, when we're talking about weight of things with the differentials, you're oftentimes talking about a gyro effect. And if anybody was a kid and they had those stupid balls that you yank that cord out of them and they'd spin, and you try to move them around like this, and half the time your wrist would get tired, and because that's what they were for strengthening your wrist. That's the gyro effect. It's like we came out with the lightweight rear ring gear for the 8X and 8XE. We came out with that because we tested it, and it was a significant improvement. And it's not because it's lighter and it goes faster. It does go a little bit faster. It's because That amount of weight that far out on a diff really affected the gyroscopic effect. You could literally go from fishtailing coming out of a corner, getting on the gas, to grabbing the same amount of gas on exactly the same track and it not coming out on you in the back. You literally would arc the corner and just keep going, and you're like, all I did was change a ring gear, right? That's the silliest thing I've ever heard. So basically what we've been spending a lot of time doing is, okay, we went to aluminum pins. There's no reason not to run them. Okay. The 8XT comes with aluminum pins now. Okay. For what it's worth. So that's out drives. Okay. We have a different front, center, and rear out drive today. The center are obviously different because you got to fit a brake over them, right? The front and rear are different because the original design of the 8X front end, for those that followed the 8X through its history, had all kinds of stuff going on that sucked the bone in and out of there, and that's why we needed the longer front out drives. It's not fixed in the kits. It won't be. It just is what it is. But what we've started doing now is we have found, if you want to, you don't have to, the rear out drive is shorter and lighter, and you can use it in the front, and you don't have any problems with losing the out drive or losing the bones. The main reason for that I mention that to people is not because it's lighter, it's because it's the same part. Now I only have to carry one set of parts in my bag than now. Yeah. I only carry two. I carry center out drives and rear ones instead of having to carry front, center, and rear ones. But the other big advantage is anytime you're going to rebuild a car, as things are kind of get somewhere on them, they bind different, and then you get different type of traction, different type of steering. We found what that can make possible now is that, especially since most of us are running universals front and rear, is now we can take our out drives and our front universals as our rear ones get really hammered because your rear gets beat up faster than your front. And we can take both of those, put those on the rear, and then put new ones on the front, and it maintains the balance of the car, but now it's nice and tight again. Sounds silly, but anyway, that's why we run the rear out drives in the front now. But the cars won't come that way. The next couple of cars, not until at 2.0 will that happen. And then as far as diff cases go, we've got the standard diff case and we've got the HD diff case. Typically, we run the HD diff case in the center now. It is a tiny bit heavier, but that's also why we went and lightened all the spur gears now. So all of our spur gears are sold in the lightened form instead of, it used to be like the 48 was light, and I think maybe it was the 45. Anyway, there was only like two of them that were light, and it happened to be the ones we included in the old truggy and the buggy. And then the rest of them had no holes in it. I was like, well, now you're trying to change your gear ratio to see what a different spur gear does, but you're also changing the weight of it. So now all of them are light. And
makes sense.
One thing we recently changed, and I actually lowered the price on a bunch of that stuff. But the only reason we run the HD diff case in the center is it holds more oil. The center diff. So if you're thinking about diffs, and now we'll get in past the mechanical side.
Yep.
When it comes to diffs, you rebuild them. If you rebuild them often enough, if you think of rebuilding diffs in terms of hours, I would say the center diff lasts about an hour. The rear diff is anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. The front diff seems to last forever. It can be anywhere from 6-8 hours of runtime before it starts to kind of degrade or feel different, performance-wise on the car. So as far as rebuilding stuff, what does that mean? That means that for every time I rebuild, say, my front diff, I've rebuilt my center diff 6 or 7 times already and my rear diff 3 or 4 times. If I want my car to be consistent. That's why we rebuild them, because we want it to be consistent. And when I say rebuild, I don't mean I pull the diff out of the car and I dump the oil out and I go, oh, it looks pretty good. I put everything back in there and refill it with oil and screw it back together and throw it in the car. That is not rebuilding a diff, guys. I see a lot of people do that. They're like, no, I freshened up the oils, man. If you have it open, finish rebuilding it. And there's only one more step that's really needed, and that's you always pull the pins out and pull the out drives out, clean the grease off, re-grease your out drives with a good quality grease. We will be selling a grease at some point in life if I can get the vendor to ever package this stuff. But
we have a grease called Great Grease.
It's better than our black grease.
Okay.
Great grease. Trust me, I've tested it. I've tested about 25 different greases at this point in life.
Good.
Again,
I'm a grease guy. I have like this box full of little greases that I like playing around with that stuff.
JT Bearings just released a gold grease. That's a pretty darn good grease. We will be releasing a gold. It's gold in color. It's copper in color, but we're going to release. His is like gold copperish in color. It's basically like a type of it's just a high temperature metallurgic grease. And it just lasts longer. So you'll find if you use black grease and you run your car for even 30 minutes and you take the center diff and you kind of put sideways pressure on an outdrive and try to twist it, it's almost impossible to turn. And if you do exactly the same thing with it with the right grease in it, it's nice and smooth to turn.
Wow.
So
that
your
big
diff
of a difference.
locks up. Yeah, absolutely. And it makes a difference especially if you're running a long main, 30-minute, 60-minute main. So the grease that you use in the diff, really important. The fact that you rebuild them. Again, 1 to, let's say, we'll be nice, 1 to 3 in the rear to 8 in the front.
Wow.
As far as hours go. So basically before every single main, my center diff always gets rebuilt. And then depending on how more recently I've rebuilt the rear diff, I would go at that one next if I have time, and then I would do the front. The poor front diff always kind of just hangs out there. Usually I'll rebuild the front diff as I need to steal the outdrives to put in the back. But unfortunately, I'm just being honest about it. Okay, and then so you've got all that stuff, right? And that's just the normal hardware portion and the rebuild. Now you've got oils.
Yep.
Diff oils. It basically works. So the center diff, the diff oil sort of works like everybody when I started, like, it works just like a slipper clutch. You know, if you need tires to slip around a lot more, just go down in the center. Horse crap. Nice word. The center diff affects the rotation of the car in and out of a corner. Every time I go to high bite, everybody's always like, go up in the center diff, go up in the center diff. Well, that's great. But what you really need when you go to high bite is you need to go up in oils as a car. A lot of the times, if you're having to play with diff oils to make the car do something you want, somewhere balance-wise, something else is probably not quite right, unless it's going up as a whole or going down as a whole. So once you find the diff oils that really work for you to provide the balance for the car that you like. So a rear diff, as you go lighter in oil, high speed on power, the car will rotate better. But as you go to pick up the throttle out of a turn, so you arc the turn and now you want it to just straighten up and shoot forward, the lighter you are, the more it'll continue to come around. So you go to a thicker oil and now it'll help lock both tires and it'll just it'll push the car forward. So it feels like you have more side bite in the back when you usually go to a thicker oil until you get too thick. If you get too thick, then nothing rotates properly and then everything it starts to over rotate the other direction. It's really weird. Center diff, if you go too thick in the center diff versus the rear, the front and rear, you'll usually notice that it'll kind of feel like a light rear diff. So let's say you're running 7.74, because that's usually what I have in the car, and you go up to 15,000 in the center. I guarantee when you go to grab the throttle coming out of a turn, your car is going to go whoa and rotate so hard and so fast and be going 30 degrees further direction that you just turned into than any other time. So when it comes to going up, because there's a lot of bite, go up in all three diffs. We'll get to the front. The front, it's one of those things. I usually adjust the front based on the balance of the car. But the other thing that I want to bring up is about oil in general, shock oil and diff oil alike. Okay, let's use shock oil. If you're at 50, well, let's use stuff that we have. Let's go to, well, 50 is such a nice round number. If you're at 50 and you go to 55, you changed it by 5 weight, right? But 5 out of 50, percentage-wise, is let's say it's this big, right? It's 10%. But we don't need to use numbers. They confuse people sometimes. I'm not saying I'm confusing you. I like using things a lot better. If you're at 30 weight and you go up 5 weight, you just changed your shock oil this much. Percentage-wise.
Yeah.
So if you're somebody and your setup has kind of gotten so skewed that you're running 45 weight in the front and you're running like 30 weight in the rear, you need to fix your setup, because then what's going to happen is when it gets hotter or colder and you go up 2.5 weight in the front and 2.5 weight in the rear, you just change the balance of your car significantly, because the weight of oil is so different between the two. Diff oil is the same way. You have to keep in mind, the reason we often go between like 3 and 4 in the rear, you have to keep in mind, if I go from 4 down to 3, I just changed the percentage factor of the oil by 25%. Okay, if I have my center diff and I go from 10 to 12, I changed it 2%. Oh no, sorry, that's more than that. 20%. So the percentages, it's something I see a lot of people. No, I changed. I went up. So like if you're going for high bite and you normally run 774, and you're going to freaking swing for the fences, and you're going to go and take your buggy, and you're going to go 15, 20 and put something in the rear, percentage-wise, you guys want to calculate the percentage and go up to that. Don't just look at the number and went, well, I went up 5 in the front and 5 in the center, so I'm going to go up 5 in the rear, because you don't want to go from 4 to, let's say, 10 in the back and expect your car to work right. So that's kind of, again, the 2-cent version of oils. Front diff oils, of all the oils that I feel affect the car, I feel the front oil is probably the least effect of a change, but it definitely affects it. So if you know your car's on the front end and it's turning from the front, it's going to obviously affect it more. Especially if the balance of your car is a little off. If the balance of your car is okay, so you have the front and rear balanced okay, going down in front, it's going to make it turn harder, and going up in front is usually going to make it so you can be on the wheel a little bit more. And those are the basics.
Yep.
You can get into on power versus off power and high speed versus low speed turns and yada, yada, yada. But I'll leave it at that.
There you go. Yeah. So center diff, what you were saying, like you go up and then your car it rotates a little harder, right?
Yep.
I remember. Yeah. I remember when I talked to David Ronaldfalk when he was on the J Concepts team, and he just started running the J Concepts tires, and he noticed there was a little bit of a difference. He had to adjust his setup for our tires because he said that the JC tires had more side bite than the AK stuff. So what he did was just change his center diff. It went up, a little bit, and then that kind of gave the rotation that he was looking for. So it definitely is something that guys tune for rotation, the center diff, which is kind of backwards. You think the front and rear diff is in the combination is what kind of dictates a lot of the balance, but the center diff also plays a big part of this.
Yeah, and I mean, it can affect power bleed. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if you end up with too light of an oil in a car,
you'll just constantly,
especially in a truggy, you'll heat up the center diff more than you need to. It'll get super inconsistent, and you'll also just burn through fuel for no reason because you don't have power going. You're not.
All right. So that is the basics. That's the setup portion of it. Now we're going to move into Q&A. There's a lot of questions I can already tell. Here we go. Nico asks, Ryan, I just pulled up to the track I'm racing on this weekend, and it's very sandy. Well, he's at the track right now. So I don't know. Would you recommend running yours and Don's new setup to start with, baseline?
As far as a balanced setup for our 8X today,
Yep.
electric or nitro, for us normal folks, I feel it is the best balanced setup that we have.
Sweet.
What I will stipulate about our setup is we use 47.5 front shock oil, which technically doesn't exist from TLR yet. I will say yet. It will come out. Shock oil is a whole other conversation right now. But something to understand about oils, again, fluids, this is school time. To get 47, you do not mix half of 50 and half of 45. That doesn't get you to 47. Okay. You mix 2/3 of 45 and 1/3 of 50. Okay. Gets you to 47. So that's the stupid side of fluids.
Yeah, not as straightforward as you would think.
No, it isn't, but that's life.
There's a lot of other factors happening in here.
Yeah, something people not everybody realizes about us is at TLR. I talked to a team driver the other day that didn't understand it. For what it's worth, people need to know TLR shock oil, not diff oil, shock oil, is still mixed in our California warehouse by a human on a viscometer at a certain exact temperature to get to an exact number, and is like plus or minus 0.5% of the weight every single time you get it. So it is made in-house. The TLR packaged shock oil, not the stuff that comes in your kits. So
there you go. That's
most consistent shock oil on the market today.
Yeah, that's a big thing people don't know about the TLR shock oil. They just assume it's made overseas somewhere, No, it's actually made.
I tried to find a resource for it, and the most any of them could tell me was plus or minus 5%. I'm like, so what you're telling me is I can get a bottle of 30 weight, and it could be 25 or 35, and we have 2.5 weights in between each of those? I'm like, I don't want to buy a bottle and wonder if it's one of 7 different varieties. So there are other people on the market that I know do that today. So
okay, so we have a question from Matthew Whitehead. Is TLR coming back to the UK, just like it was back in the day? Thanks.
I can try to answer that. I can tell you that our UK division, while it is Horizon, right? It is Horizon. They run based on what they feel they're going to sell. So if there's something they feel they're going to sell okay, or they get enough people that talk to them about it, like exactly what happened with the 8XE and also actually with the 22X4. They weren't going to bring those in initially, and enough people asked them to bring them in that they brought them in, and then they sold all of them. So TLR can come back to the UK no problem if people are buying it from them or if they're requesting it from them. So it's their choice, I guess I'm saying. It's not like, so Horizon in the US, right? If we at LOSI or TLR make something, Horizon US is going to carry it. Plain and simple. We made it, you're going to carry it because that's why we made it. You told us to make it. Well, they didn't tell us, but we wanted to make it, and we all voted on it. And made it.
Yep. So yeah, if you want the UK TLR to come back into the UK, it definitely needs to be a demand thing, I think.
Yep.
So write to your governor and your mayors. Make sure your voice is heard. All right. This is a good question. A lot of people have been asking me, where can I get an 8XE? Can't find it anywhere.
Go on Facebook on the 8X and 8XE forum, and every once in a blue moon, somebody's selling one.
Yeah, there's a hobby shops. You're gonna have to try to track one down. I saw one, somebody posted the other day, they bought one, and I'm pretty sure they bought one at a hobby shop. So you might have to do some phone calling, some digging. They are definitely sold out.
Yeah, guys, I promise it's not on purpose that we run out of this stuff. With all of the COVID stuff,
Yeah,
we burned through 6 months of stock of the 8XE in a month and a half. And while we like that from a sales perspective, it sucks because now we don't have it because it was never on what we call our production schedule. And the production schedule's only got so many little gaps where we could add something in. Like, yeah. I mean, honestly, I'd rather get the 8XT in than an 8XE again right now, just because so many more people want that, right? So, you know, the choice is, oh, we could push out the 8XT and get 8XEs back in, no problem. But that's a choice we make, right?
Yeah.
And we've chosen to get 8XTs is the next of any of our 8 scales that we'll be getting back in stock or in stock.
There you go, Barry Baker. Yeah, nice shirt, baby. I just got it actually 2 days ago. I got the JRX2 the one as well.
I need to get a JRX2
No,
one.
it was a really cool shirt because I saw JR wear it and one of his podium photos. I'm like, dang, that's a cool shirt. I gotta get that thing. So then I ordered this one and the JRX2 shirt. They're available. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get that because they look cool. I feel like I can wear them anywhere, you know, not just at the track. It's more of a lifestyle looking shirt than it is like an RC shirt. So I'm like, you know, I'm wearing this today. I'm wearing it around, you know. So yeah, great shirt. Looks cool. The color's nice, fits well. Yeah, so check that guy. If you guys are interested in it, check it out. They are in stock at the moment. All right, so let's move on to some more Q&As. Let's see. Lots of comments saying hi. Still down here. Okay. All right. This is an interesting one. There's some talks about some gyroscopic stuff. This is probably, I don't know, kind of in that same kind of realm. Do any pros use the anti-lock braking features on some radios?
Not that I've ever seen.
Not that I know of. They're not actually allowed to use any driver assisting when it's racing. That's kind of like the governing body, ROAR, IFMAR. No driver assisted stuff in the 10 scale, 8 scale sanctioned races. So no gyros, no ABS, no throttle control, none of that stuff. So pros are not, they're supposed to be pros for a reason, because they're good, not because they're good at using software and weird tricks. So
although you would be surprised, they use a lot of their other radio settings. They use Expo, they use servo speed, a lot of that.
Ton of servo speed.
Yep.
All right, let's see. Quick question from Billy Ross. Is Losi coming out with the SCTE 4.0 with quick diffs? No, not anytime soon. It doesn't seem.
I'll put it this way. Technically, the SCTE is my product line again. You guys have probably seen a lot of that Tenacity stuff coming. One second. Let me grab a drink for my wife. My throat's been dry. I went out on a photo shoot in the middle of the desert the other day, and I feel like I have a pound of dirt in my throat.
Oof.
So the SCTE, in its current version, was technically put out by Frank, even though it was the last version I kind of helped develop. And then he took it over when I went to Spectrum.
Okay.
But now that I'm back, I took over the Tenacity line to try to make it as good as the SCTE used to be from the vendor it's from today. That's why we have like the Tenacity Pro line now. And as it stands today, the Tenacity Pro versions are doing very, very well in the hobby shops again, which maybe hopefully can mean that we get a 4-wheel short course. Dude, I love 4-wheel short course. Barry and I were actually just talking about this like an hour before this call, maybe not even that, about him and me beating the crud out of each other. It's the most fun. The most you will ever see anybody smile and laugh on a driver's stand is during a 4-wheel short course main.
It's actually really fun to race, man.
Fun.
Yeah.
That's all that class is about. And it's except for Matt Wilson. He was very about it. But
yeah, he was a spoiler.
He was really fast.
He took it to the next level, man.
He did, dude.
Yeah, he did.
So, I mean, unfortunately, I hate to say, I would say no today right now. If anything were to come out, it probably would end up being like a Tenacity Pro 2.0 or whatever, but it's not on anything, anywhere, planned, talked about, nothing. So it would be 3-4 years down the road unless all of a sudden four-wheel short course got popular again.
Yeah, another demand thing, man. If it's not really that hot, it's, it's hard to make stuff for it.
And it sucks because I have my SCTE 3.0 on the wall, and every so often I'll go practice, and I'll take it with me, and I'm just like, this is so much fun. I've got 2 brand new. That reminds me, we should think of some type of raffle for this one. I know it's not 8-scale related, but I have 2 brand new, fully Bradley Fine Line Design painted in my scheme SCTE, or basically our what do we call that body with all the cutouts in it and everything? A really good four-wheel short course body that most people actually like. I have found 2 of those in my garage yesterday, cleaning it out.
What?
Brand new. I'm never going to use them.
Wow.
We should give them away somehow.
Yeah,
anyway.
We could do a giveaway. We could turn one of these things
You're the
into
team
a giveaway.
Manager. You figure that one out.
I could figure that out. All right, let's check out some more questions here. This one's a good one. Can you guys make an aluminum 8-scale shock tool, please?
That has literally been on the project list since I took over 8-scale again. So what has it been now? Maybe 3 years?
Yeah.
So there's a pecking order to an engineering list, and something like that sits out here, right? And then we go to make a new car, right? And all those things go like this, right? And we make all those things, make all those things, make all those things, and this still sits here. And then we want option parts for that car. And then we want the truck. Notice how this thing kept sitting over here? That's exactly how it works. However, in lieu of that, since I couldn't get any engineering time, I had a couple nice guys that I asked to draw something up for me, draw it up. And we have carbon ones on the way. Actually.
What?
Sorry, I have one of those too. Should you get mad? They're awesome. You don't need to take the shock boot off. You can put the shock boot in place.
Are they chamfered? Is it chamfered like the 22X4 stuff?
Watch. With the shock boot in place. Oh, hey. Holds my shock. Pretty cool, huh?
Wow. Yeah, with the boot in place, man. That's I mean, like before, you could risk, you'd have to take the extra step of taking, taking a shock bottom off and then taking the boot off and then doing all that stuff. But now it's like you can do it.
And then these should be here like in the next week or 2. These are our droop blocks. So these will be here too.
Uh-oh.
So some stuff coming, guys. Oh, I know, trust me, Alex, that plastic shock tool for our shocks, every single time I open a new kit, and let me tell you, I open new kits a lot, I take the new shock tool and put it in my thing and throw the old one away because I always manage to strip another one. And that thing, oh my gosh, what a lifesaver. The simple fact that I can do it while the boot's in there.
Yeah, that's a must-have right there.
So, and they'll be fairly expensive.
So Brock Dean Ratliff says, even as a master technician, break-in was scary for me. So what is the best method of breaking in an engine?
The first time your engine actually ever turns off and it's stuck at TDC and you're there and you hear that grinding noise because you got to grind it out by using a flathead on your flywheel, you want to cry because it's a $500 engine and yeah, I mean with a pipe. But yeah, I mean honestly, guys, if you are not around somebody that knows what they're doing, send your engine off to one of they call it eBiz, or Adam Drake. And again, I don't use his service. I'm not promoting it from a standpoint of I get anything. I just know he's a nice guy and he's going to do you right. He does a lot of other engine services, and there is not a guy in our industry today that knows as much about nitro engines as him. So I trust him. And I mean, I worked with him for years and I know the guy and I fully respect his abilities. He's a really great guy, and so is his wife. So, well, not a great guy. She's a great girl. But either of them will help you anytime. And guys, that's one thing about our hobby. I mean, this is literally the guy that is the best in the business at this. I guarantee if you're out there on a practice day and he happens to be there, you can walk up, hey, dude, can you tune my engine? And it does not matter. It doesn't have to be the one that says Adam Drake on it. He'll walk over and be like, yeah, dude, here we go. You can't go do that in any other sport.
Nothing else, man. Yeah. All right. So
Brad.
there we go. Brad Burt, do you think you should change the rod after break in? Is it needed?
If you are not using an OS or a Nova Rossi engine, absolutely.
Really?
You should change the rod and the front or the rear bearing. Well, you probably want to change the front one too in the other branded engines after you break it in, because it will be stretched.
Interesting. Okay. Any tips on cornering and the inner back wheel lifts, but I didn't barrel. What should I change? 1/8 scale e-buggy. So basically, the front end is kind of diving in, and it's kind of tipping over, and the rear wheel is lifting up. What's the cause of that?
I'd probably lay over the rear shock a little bit more, or stand up the front shock a little bit more, because that's a balance thing.
Yep.
That's not a that has to do everything with the support in the car. The front and the rear aren't supported equally.
Yeah.
So the whole chassis is not rolling together. You're dipping in the front.
Yeah.
One of the things that we found that's really important, and I'm going to put this out here right now today, guys, is if you have not tried a 2.6 front sway bar, and it's really easy, you either get it out of an Elite kit or you take a rear 2.6 bar and you cut it. You have a 2.6 bar. We are now finding that the front bar on the 8X is like almost the first most important thing to the balance of the car. And the 2.6 seems to be that middle road. So it's pretty much anywhere from a 2.5. I've talked to some people that are up as high as like a 2.8 or 2.9 front bar for like AstroTurf. Wow. Okay. That's for AstroTurf, right? Those guys, man, they need to calm the car down, right? Unless they know how to cut tires properly. That's a whole other topic. But please try it. That's all I'm going to say. But yeah, probably either lay a shock over or put a stiffer front bar on it, and I bet your whole problem would go away.
But Bob is saying that once I'm out there with you guys, which I will be, supposedly my plan is, for those who are wondering if I'm going to be here in Champaign forever, my plan is actually to relocate towards the end of July. So where I'll be, I actually don't know yet.
What?
Yeah, so there's another thing. I'll talk to you later afterwards, but yeah, so I don't know yet. We'll see what
Regardless
happens.
of where he's going to be, he built a nitro car and he's going to learn.
Oh no, for sure. That like I said, it wasn't because I didn't want to get into nitro.
Wherever the heck you are, I'll drive. I don't care.
It's not because I don't want to get into nitro. It's because when I'm at the track, I'm working every time. So it was very hard to get some nitro.
Part of your job now is to know this is what the track feels like, and what did you do that made it better?
Now it is. Before I was the camera guy, so doing all the social media stuff. Now it's part of my job. But yeah, so I'll definitely be in nitro. I'll definitely be at the track racing at JBRL's nitro events, having a blast with everybody, hanging out. That's it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it because it is something new for me. The whole nitro program. I know I'm going to probably throw my radio at some point because of the frustrations, because everybody goes through it, right? You gotta go through the nitro growing pains to really appreciate why
if you don't ask for help, you get to go through it. If all you do is open your mouth, then you don't have to go through that part.
No, I'm sure I want to learn. I'm gonna go through the pains myself, because I believe learning. I'm a true believer in learning from your mistakes. I have to make the mistake in order to really understand what's going on. Always been that one of those type of guys. I just hope I don't make an expensive mistake. All right, so here we go.
Doesn't take a lot to blow up a $500 motor. What?
Dude, wait. Here's a good one. Robert Cloud, new to the hobby, any advice? So Robert,
have fun.
Yeah, have fun, and if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask somebody. All right, so far this is a general thing. If you have questions you don't know, don't be afraid to ask somebody, especially somebody that looks like they're doing well on the track. The cars look dialed. They're probably because they know what they're doing. And so, and more than likely, this is how our hobby works, is that a lot of it is hands-on, teaching each other how to do things. There's, like you said, there's really no material, no manuals. We can go, talk all day, 4 or 5 different videos about just shocks alone. So there's a lot of information. It's really hard to get. So the best way to learn quickly is learn at the track from somebody that can teach you. And right, Larry Tom and dude, yeah, yep, Larry Tom, man. The Asian COVID hair, baby. I haven't gotten a haircut this whole time. Call it
Ouch. I
call
did
it
it myself.
I call it COVID hair. I haven't had a haircut yet. We are just opening, I believe, the barbershops and stuff tomorrow.
Wow.
So
yeah, we opened, I think, last week. We got our barbershops.
Yeah, stage 4 rolls in tomorrow, I believe. Yeah, I'd have to double check, but all right, here we go. William Hobbs, man, good point here. I've been racing 8 skill truggy for 2 years, and yes, it's different from 10 skill, and loved it and having a ball with 8 skill. Maybe next year I move to nitro. See, so not always do you have to go straight in a nitro. You can kind of take the slower path and develop into a career, everything driver. So I'm just taking that slower path.
Yeah.
All right.
About that.
See? There we go. Joe Fioca. He knows my pains. He knows what I'm talking about. William Hobbs, indeed. I'm in the same boat. 8 skill for me started with the XE. Was released. Looking to start Nitro next year too. All right, Joe. I'm with you, man. You don't have. We didn't have to jump straight in. We want to learn the ropes and then slowly get into it, right? All right. Dale Best got a good question here. Ryan, do you experiment with roll center changes much on your 8 scale, and how do you know when to adjust roll centers?
I'd say that if you don't understand roll centers fully, stop thinking about them. And I'm not. I would never say anything to disparage anybody. It just that term is thrown around a lot, and I would say almost every single setup change that you make on your car can affect roll center in one way or another.
Yes.
And so sometimes if you think of everything in terms of roll centers, you can get lost on the simple things. Like, oh, I want to raise my roll center. I'm going to lower this inner link. Well, if it gives you 63 degrees of camber gain, your roll center isn't going to do anything for you. So when I make changes, a lot of the times I'm making a change based on what I know that change is going to do for me, not because it's going to raise or lower or adjust my roll center, right? I don't ever, there's not a single change I make and I go, you know what? My car's doing this. I really feel like the front roll center maybe needs to come up. I just don't think in terms of that because that term wasn't really thrown around a lot when I was growing up through racing.
Never was. It never was, man.
I know a lot about roll centers inadvertently because I realize now that, oh, this does affect that. That is essentially what I'm doing when I make this change. But I mean, roll centers is a can of worms that if you look at stuff in terms of the term roll center, you're going to lose your noodle, is what I'm going to say. I would look at, like we sell 2 different rear D blocks, right? One is the standard block and the other one's listed LRC, low roll center. Okay, yep, takes the pins, moves them down 1 full pill. For you, what that means is that to get the same anti-squat, if you're running 0 in the front C pill, you would move it down to 1 down. Now you're at the same anti-squat, but both your pins are lower. That's lowering the roll center, right? I don't care that it lowered the roll center. I care what it does when I do that. I care that moving those down did something. Well, moving those down, a lot of people are like, well, I moved that down. I lowered my roll center. I'm going to have more grip. Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Depends where you are.
Yeah. I think the roll center, it just sounds technical, right? But like when I think about setup, I never think of adjusting what people say as roll setter. I'm adjusting those things, but I'm adjusting it because I want a certain thing to happen. Not,
Yeah,
you know,
like
hey, I just lowered my roll center and my car is so dialed. You know what I mean? Because there's so many different ways to lower a roll center. You know,
that's one thing. I wish I could share the setup guide that we have for the 8XT, but there are some reasons that I'm not at liberty to share it right now.
probably some stuff. Yeah.
Because I would just share it. You guys know me. I'll share whatever I can that I'm not going to get in trouble for. The link I just posted is a link to my Facebook page to the latest setup. I hope it works because I couldn't figure out how to paste it on there. Like I said, I have no problem sharing stuff. The latest setup sheet, what I do is I talk about the topic of roll centers, that roll centers exist and things raise and lower it. And typically when you make these changes, it does this to the roll center.
Mm-hmm.
But then what I do is in something like a camber link change, I have a little notation that, hey, this is something that affects roll center. Here's what changing a camber link up, down, left or right, longer, shorter does. And when you do it, this part raises the lower center, this part lowers it. So I tell you what direction it does it. Over here, I kind of explain it, but I'm never going to bother taking the time to explain to somebody, oh, I make this change because it affects the roll center. Because to be honest, I couldn't tell you where my roll center is on the car. I could tell you that it does affect the roll center. I know that the front and rear are at this because there's a computer program for it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's kind of.
I mean, Dale, I'm not trying to be a butt about it or anything. I'm just trying to explain it in terms that it helps me to understand it. So that's kind of the only way I can really explain it. There's probably people out there that can explain it better than me. I can tell you that at one point we created a car that the roll center was like 20 millimeters below the earth because we're like, oh, it'll be really in the track. It should be great. It was awful. So it's not really about where it is in life. It's really about
in the track.
Everything. Yeah,
it's in the track. In the track, dude.
It's in the track. We could have buried it in the track. So I'm just saying it's a lower roll center isn't necessarily going to get you in the track. A higher roll center isn't necessarily going to get you out of the track. Some people think of roll centers in terms of that. Now, if you're in space and you're not in the realm of correct or balance of the vehicle, then yeah, that roll center can make you feel like you're in space because it's just way off. So,
all right. Next question, Kevin Johnson. Is TLR coming out with a new low C SB 2.0, or are they still going to produce the original
5B?
Oh, sorry.
I actually can answer this question. The original 5B, Kevin, Dave's Discount Motors is getting another shipment of those in soon. We sell that car only through Dave's Discount Motors because they don't want to keep them in stock in our warehouse here because we don't sell through them fast enough. So it's a inventory location hold amount time versus how many we're selling. It sounds stupid, and I know, corporate this, corporate that, but we have found a way to keep selling them, and it is through Dave's Discount Motors, and you buy it for the normal price through them. Is there a 2.0 coming? I'd love to tell you guys. We're thinking about it, but again, it's a supply and demand thing. We're going to make the things that we feel people are demanding more. If we get 5,000 people that write in and ask us, why don't we have a 5B 2.0? Guess what we're going to make next? A 5B 2.0. So yeah.
There you go. All right. Matt Miller asks, can you talk about universals versus CVD handling characteristics, front and rear?
So universals versus CVDs. So before we found more balance in the car, we had to allow one end of the car to move more than we allowed the other end. And then we changed how it moved, all based on drive shaft lockup characteristics. So a universal is going to lock up the least. It's going to allow the suspension to continue its movement, whether you're on power or off power, the most. A CVA or a CVD, we can't call them CVDs. CVDs we have a CVA, right? So our axle comes and has the ball on it, or a drive shaft, and then we have this part over here. A CVD is the other way around.
Yep.
Okay. We can't make that because it's patented by MIP, rightfully so. It was a great design in the day. In a lot of instances, it still is. So, so we make what's called a CVA. Similar idea, reverse concept.
Backwards, yep.
Right. CVAs tend to produce a lot more forward traction. They tend to be better on higher bite surfaces because they lock stuff up and try to help keep the car more flat. And then you can change their characteristics even more. I mean, I tested rear CVAs for, I want to say 7 months before we finally came out with what we refer to as the D, or deep yoke CVA now, that has the 3 pin locations. There's so much involved in drive shafts that I have now learned that honestly I didn't know before, with slot differences and ball sizes and timing and pin locations and depths of cups and depths of pins and all sorts of stuff, that it can really affect the car as far as throttle traction in versus traction out, on power traction, as far as a CVA goes. A uni is designed such that the pivot point of the rear or the pivot point of the front is where the pivot point of the uni is, and that's a uni. You can move that around all you want, and other than having it hit the wrong stuff, it doesn't really change a lot because of the design characteristic. So now that we've gotten the chassis more balanced, we've found that running both front and rear universals help the drive shafts and the characteristics of how the car goes through bumps be more consistent. And so that's why a lot of us are running universals front and rear, but they bind different. So like a universal, you move the rear hub forward, you get more grip. Usually with the CVD, as you move the rear hub back, it gets more grip because you get into the realm of it locking up a little less. Whereas you get into a uni actually locking up a little more, and strangely enough, it feels like you have more side bites. So it's just the carrot. Hey, what's up, BK? Anyway, I got to say hi to my boy. So BK makes some cool stuff for our cars now that he sells through his engineering group, for what it's worth. Some cool shock tools as well, and some cap things. But I mean, that's the basic characteristics. I mean, if I was going to tell anybody outright, I'd say, hey, I mean, we made the CVA work really well in the rear with the DCVA, even in the dirt. It works really well when it's a fairly groomed track. It just doesn't seem to work as well when the track starts to develop bumps. The other thing to understand about drive shafts is they need to break in. And our universal takes a long time to break in. So what I would recommend to anybody is, if you ever have a problem on the car, take the most worn out drive shafts, universals you have, and put them on the back. So every time somebody, if they, let's say, wear out their rear universals or bend a rear universal, the first thing I tell them to do is like, okay, pull the ones out of your front. And again, keeping the right on the right, the left on the left, put those in the back, put new ones in the front. You'll maintain the balance in the car. You'll still have the rear grip, and you'll be fine. And a lot of these people that are trying the new setup with universals, what they'll do is they get lazy. They put brand new ones in the rear, and they've got old broken in ones in the front. And the front's, it's not balanced. The front's getting all this grip because it's binding more, and the rear's like moving all over the place. And they're like, no, that setup sucks. It's like, well, did you do it the way I told you to? No, I guess I'll try that next. And then they finally do, and they come back, they're like, oh, I get it now. And it's not, I'm not trying to tell people I don't want to cause any more work. I don't want to cause anybody to buy more stuff. I'm just going to tell them what I've learned, and it's kind of their choice at that point. So,
Righto. All right. So, are there major changes from the 4.0 to the 8, the X8X Nitro?
It's not even
Tons.
the same car.
Yeah,
the only thing
different.
that we did keep is we did keep the center internal diff gears, because at the time they were the best diffs on the market. Still, to this day. I've learned some stuff about diffs recently, so we might try some stuff in the future. Who knows? But as of right now, they're an incredibly solid, incredibly smooth, incredibly stable differential. And so we kept those, and they were already metric. But that's all that we kept. Everything else changed. Every single pickup point of the entire car, the entire balance, every single thing changed. So.
Alrighty. So why don't we have more sway bar adjustments other than size? 8-scale on-road, we can check the chassis tweak by adjusting the sway bar ends. Would it be helpful for the chassis balance in off-road?
Yes and no. So we've thought about changing to that type of link. And we might at some point. But the reality is, and again, this is not meant to offend anybody, off-road guys are usually not as meticulous as on-road guys.
That's true.
Meticulous, I mean, on-road guys will go through and check the tweak and do all this stuff, and they want everything on ball bearings, and everything has to be perfect, and the second they touch one dot, they're going to come back, and yada, yada, yada. Off-road guys, you have any idea how hard it has been to get people to switch over to using droop blocks rather than measuring shocks? It's a no-brainer. Everything tweaks and moves around. You measure droop on blocks because it'll be the same every single time, whether you put new arms on, old arms on, regardless of what you do. It's been a nightmare. Imagine telling them to remember to set the tweak between your arms based on the length of your... No, everybody's going to turn it like this and turn it in and put it together, and they're going to go, why is my car not working right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of simplicity this way, right? When it's already pre-made links, like you can't really jack that up. For the advanced guys, I'm sure you can create something, right?
Is it a good idea? Yes.
Yeah.
Should we maybe do it? Maybe, but
maybe, yeah.
I have to know that everybody's going to want to use it.
All right. Here, Nico. What's up, Nico? Good question here. How often do you bleed your shocks at a race? Like over a race weekend? How many times?
It depends what I'm running. If I am running an emulsion shock, I will rebleed my shock 2 to 3 times a day while I am at a track. Anytime I go to a new track, every time I get it in and out of my car, I will rebleed it. The reason for that is there's air inside them. That is the whole point of an emulsion shock. There's air in them, right? And anytime you change pressure, whether it's barometric pressure because it went from 30 degrees to 80 degrees and you built them when it was 30, whether you went from down here in Riverside to up in the hill, that's 2,000 feet. You don't think that they're going to have a lot extra pressure. So I would say if you ever wonder, there's a total cheater method to bleeding a shock. I mean, you can literally pop the nut off, set the car down flat, pop the top of the shock off. And again, you don't do it fast and you don't do it after you've turned your car upside down, but you let out most of the way the bleeder screw and push the shock down, right? Pull the bleeder screw out, put the bleeder screw back in, tighten it all the way, and let it all back out. And you now just rebled your shock. Nothing should really come out at that point, and that's going to be the cheap version of doing it. A lot of people will go so far as, if it's an emulsion shock, to just rebuild their shock, meaning pour the oil out and put new oil in. If the oil hasn't been run a bunch, I don't really feel that's necessary. I'll usually just top it off because I'm kind of built that way. Again, I was raised on a budget. The oil still looks okay in there. We're all right. We're just going to top that bad boy off.
Yep.
As long as there's no dirt and grime in there and it's clear, then, or whatever color it's supposed to be, it's fine. But if it's a bladder shock, if you did it right, there's no air in there. In theory, that means that as pressures change, it shouldn't change. I would still rebuild it at least once a day in the middle of the day if it were me, or before a big main. But that's just me. I've talked to a lot of people. I can tell you that a bladder shock, I can go from here to up the hill, and my shocks will feel identical, and I don't have to rebleed them, right? As long as I bled them pretty much dead, they're fine. But
yeah,
that's kind of your choice.
There you guys go. All right. Ryan, Yamasaki, great question here. Would you suggest truggy or buggy as your first 8-scale vehicle?
So here's the deal. If you're going to race, it's a lot easier to get a class of buggies together. Truggy, tires cost more, but they last a lot longer because they're bigger and wider. Mm-hmm. So the bang for the buck actually ends up turning out more. And a Truggy for a lot of people is usually more fun because the tires are bigger. They go through things easier, and you can kind of rampage through things. They are more wear and tear on an engine, so you usually have to get new engines a little sooner. But I usually, if it's a new person, I'm going to usually recommend a buggy just because they can always find somebody somewhere to race. I've gone to many a club race and there isn't even a truggy class. So, and it sucks because truggies are fun, but it just is what it is. For some reason, it's just like in 10 scale, 2-wheel drive, stock. You can go run that car anywhere you want. Luckily now we can pretty much go find 4-wheel drive 13.5 anywhere we want. So that's good too. So.
So I would say if you're a seasoned racer and you've been racing RC cars for a long time, and you're just kind of jumping into 8 scale, I would get a buggy if you're at that level, but if you're kind of new and you're kind of exploring, you want to kind of hammer and bash, and this isn't just a race car, you just want to play with it around, get a truggy because those things can mash over just about everything. You can go race with it, you can go hammer on it.
They're like a monster truck that's raceable.
Yeah, it really, that's how they evolved. They were it was a monster truck class. I remember Tebow and Mayfield and Cavalier running these monster trucks.
Oh yeah, dude. Those were the days.
Why are they racing monster trucks? And then that was the first early edition of what truggy is, what truggy is now.
Yeah.
Monster trucks, bros. Serious.
Making a comeback, but actual monster trucks.
Yeah. And interesting enough, here, Nico, another good question. How does the number of holes come into play, like a 5x10 versus an 8x12?
Well, I'm going to throw it out there that you probably assumed it was a 5x15 versus an 8x12, maybe?
Yeah, 1415 maybe.
Just because that, from a hole size perspective, that's kind of more of what we use today. So a 5x15, let's say, is going to be a bigger hole all the holes are bigger. So anytime you have bigger holes, they're going to go through the oil faster, whether there's more or less of them. So you end up running thicker oil typically. So an 8x12, you're usually going to run thinner oil with. An 8x12 is going to be on thinner oil. And so the car is going to tend to roll around a little bit more. It's going to tend to want to stay on top of bumps, and you're going to want to drive it faster to kind of mull over the bumps. A 5x15 is going to tend to, the car is going to stay a lot more flat because you're running a thicker oil, but then it's going to kind of deflect faster off of the sharper bumps. But it's usually for somebody that's a little bit slower of a driver, and you're going to drive through the bumps because you don't know how to drive around them. Plain and simple. So.
All right.
Dakota would run an 8x12 and I would run a 5x15 if those were our own. That's the way I would say it to most people.
All right. So Jonathan Mint joining us from Australia. Dane Boys 130 and still going strong. Thanks for joining us, Jonathan.
Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah. So he comes up. He had a question here, or a concern, maybe a curiosity. So the ratio of the diffs or shocks to each other should always be consistent.
I
think
if you want the balance of the car to stay the same, but you want to change the characteristic of it for, say, higher bite, yes, percentage-wise, you'd go up in all 3 diffs. And then the balance of the car would stay the same versus, let's say you created your standard setup at your home track that is a Thunder Alley type track where it's a little looser, some bumps, yada, 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 and then you're going to go run AstroTurf over the weekend. You're going up in everything. Your diff oils, your shock oils, but you should do it the same to start off with percentage-wise, right? So that the balance of the car feels the same when you get there and is easier to drive.
Yep. So it all kind of goes off of your base setup too.
Yep.
Is your base setup actually working there?
Yep. And if your base setup isn't balanced and you do go up in the entire car and the balance of your car completely changes, that's how you know your base setup isn't very balanced.
There you go. Another question. Here we go. Braden Dommel wants to know. I'm running an OS Drake
Yes,
Edition
it is.
2 engine. I have two questions. One is really snappy, with most of the torque being in the first quarter to the first half of the throttle curve. What would I change so I don't have to drive it so gingerly on the throttle?
Well, I can give you a first and a second thing to try. So I can tell you with my 81 engines, they were pretty snappy off the bottom end as it was, but then it would mellow out in the middle and have pretty good top end. I actually went to a smaller spur gear. I'm now running 1346, so I geared some of the wheel spin out of the car. I took some torque out of the car. It's actually a higher gear ratio. The car comes with a 48. I went to a 40. Well, I tried a 47 and it was better. I tried a 46 and it was better. And 45 for me, I just couldn't get the timing right. So sometimes gearing is timing. You've gotten so used to the certain timing. Like Dakota, we tried gearing him down because I liked it a bunch. And timing wise, he's just like, no, like just the timing doesn't feel right to me at all. And so we started gearing back, and sure enough, he ended right back at 48. But he also has a much better finger than me. And then, so that's probably the first thing I would try, because what that's going to give you is the ability to have more runtime and more top end. You're still going to get plenty of bottom end those engines produced. I have a Drake Edition 2 now as well, and it does seem to be a tiny bit snappier off the bottom end than the one was, but it seems to smooth out a little bit more to me. So right now I am just driving it with the gear down, and it's okay. But from where I'm at, it's okay. I think, like, if I was to give the sportsman guys that I'm always around some advice, and they went from, say, the 1 to the 2, what I would tell them to do is probably take the gear. So actually gear it up. It's a smaller spur, but that's a higher gear ratio, right? More top end, less bottom end, so less wheel spin.
Yep.
I'd probably tell them to step down one, like Don Vinkmolder, who helps me a bunch, and his buddy John Brown. They basically both drive almost an identical engine, and they both run that same lower gear. But for John, because he doesn't have as much throttle control, he likes to grab the throttle harder. Again, nothing against him, just you have to tune your car to your ability, right? He's clutched down one, so he still uses the same clutch. So he hasn't gone way, way down to where he's like, say, on 4 carbon shoes. He still uses the stock clutch, which is 2 carbon shoes and 2 blue aluminum shoes. But he went down one in spring, which makes the bottom end softer. So instead of running the green gold, he runs black green. Okay. Another option is to use green gold. So stay with the springs and go buy our silver or long wear clutch shoes, which is a harder clutch shoe, and it just doesn't grab as hard. It also is a really good option for when you're going to an area and there's just not as much grip. It helps the clutch slip a little bit more. So that's kind of 3 different suggestions. You can try all or none of them.
3 ways to solve one issue. Look at that. All right. So yeah, you're gonna have to experiment around.
Throttle Expo, guys. In my Adam Drake engine, I've been doing this again for a long time. I'm at on my 81, I was at 8% Expo, right? On my 82, I'm usually somewhere around 10 or 11, depending on the track conditions. And again, I change it from time to time. I know somebody like Don on his 81 is like 12 to 15, depending on the track conditions, because he likes it really smooth off the bottom end, and it helps him maintain his speed for him. And it works really well for him. So don't be afraid to mess with your Expo along with some of the mechanical changes.
There you go. Also, tune to you.
Yeah.
All right. Rich wants to know, what is the difference between the 3 pin positions on the deep yoke CVAs?
Okay, so they're numbered 1, 2, 3. I'll use the numbers because it gets really hard to explain. Oh, when you go deeper, this and that, because people don't know whether it's deeper into the wheel or deeper into the yoke or
drive. Yeah.
So as you come towards number 1, let's say, which is actually the pin that's closest to the gearbox. Okay. The pin closest to the gearbox, or number 1, provides the most exit grip. So if you like to slide the car into a turn, but you want to mash the throttle out of the turn, 1's for you. If you're a guy that likes to have a ton of control under braking and off throttle and coming into the turn, but you're really good at maintaining your exit ability to go the way you want to go, so you have a little bit less exit grip, but you get more on off throttle or on brake entry grip. And by grip, I mean side bite. We're not talking forward bite right now.
Yeah.
Then 3 is for you. And if you want in between, you go for 2.
Yeah. I would also recommend just trying him.
Yeah, it's not hard, guys. You literally pull it off. You don't even have to get it out of the way. You pull it out a little way, the pin drops out, and you find the hole and push it back in.
Yeah.
The one thing I would note is it does have to break in. It takes about 4 tanks to break in our DCVA in any given position. And then the other thing you're going to notice is as you move it from 1 to 3, this is one of the ways it does some of this, you're moving the pin position away from the center of the car. There's less support in the car. So the rear end is going to tend to move around a little bit more. So you're going to get more support in the car as you move it closer in. So
there's some pretty crucial knowledge, as Kevin says.
We could talk about DCVAs and how we develop them for days too. It sucked.
So Kevin Heller, Ryan, please keep sharing your knowledge. It would take the average person 3 lifetimes to gain the knowledge. Thank you. So some kind words right there. So that's why I pulled him in. I was like, if I did this by myself, people would be like, oh, T-Tran doesn't know what he's talking about. Look at him. So that's why I pulled Ryan. That's why I pulled Ryan in, because he knows what he's talking about, man. This is part of his job now, to try a lot of different things to make our car as good as it can in every edition that as we move forward. So that's why he's here. He's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm glad that people are starting to see that, man. All right, so here we go. Another good question, man. And 2, sometimes when I let off the throttle completely, it doesn't return to idle right away. Like when I'm going, when I'm on the front straight at full throttle and let off, sounds like it going, so it's run on. So it goes to half throttle for a second and 2 before it returns to neutral. What could be the cause of this?
Well, there can be 2 causes for that. It's either you're not running a rubber band around your throttle linkage, or your carb slide, and the link is like there's a spring in there, and that's supposed to help push it back, but the main reason for that spring is so that when you hit your brakes, you've got room. People always think that spring's meant, it's going to push it back in there. Kind of can help with that, but sometimes that whole mechanical mechanism gets a little sticky. So what you do is, I just take a regular rubber band from like multiple header card stuff, and I twist it around a few times, and I run it, and you run it across. Can you see it on here? You run it from the.
Let's see this. Let's see this 8XT thing that you got in the back.
Yeah, we can show it on this one. You run it from the.
I was like, dear, you got the 8XT. Let's see this thing.
Okay, so see this.
Oh boy, hold on, guys. Hold on. Ryan's gonna
see if I can get the right angle. All right, see that there?
I'm trying to get him to be the main picture. Can he do it?
Yeah, it won't happen.
There it is. There it is.
Okay,
there it is.
So see how that rubber band is run there? It kind of goes from the top to the bottom, and the reason for that goes to the ball. You always want it to run across it so that it maintains even pressure on the slide, but mechanically that helps it come back to neutral. And then the other thing, usually when you're running on, it can be the top or bottom, but like if your engine's like screaming down the straight, like 90% of the time you're getting a run on, it's usually your top end being too lean. Sometimes it can be the bottom end being too lean, but a lot of times it's the top end being too lean. So I'd probably back out the top end needle a little bit. If it's screaming down the straight, you should never hear your engine and feel like the rod is going to shoot out of the thing because it's such a high pitch. It should be a nice, gritty going down the straight.
Yeah. You know? I can hear it, man. I don't know. I don't know how to set it, but I know when people's engines, by the sound, if it's tuned to kill, if it's too rich, I can hear that stuff. But I actually don't know, like, like the mechanicals of it, how, like, what all that means. But I can hear. Like, I've been around nitro enough. I've seen the top guys run at every single main, and I can hear their engines and how they're tuned.
Sorry, one thing I just thought of that it could be.
Geez, here he goes, bringing back the car, man. What in the?
So when you look at this, right, when your servo's on, okay, there should be a little bit of a gap in here, right? So if that gap is not enough, right, then that means you're actually pulling a little bit of throttle, and it's never going to return back to neutral unless you're hitting your brakes. See, it's like in and out, right?
Okie dokie. There you go. So a couple of solutions there. Kind of a complex problem, maybe a
Brady, the best thing I would do is go find somebody at your track that you trust and have them take a look at your throttle linkage first, because mechanical is easy to see. Then past that is tune. So,
all right. Toby Trainer says, asks, what's a good diff setup for medium bite on Truggy 4.0? What's your recommendation?
Oh my gosh, what was I at? My favorite was either 10. We ended up with 12. We made 12.5 oil. So at one point, I spent a lot of time on like 10, 12, 5, 5. But 10, 15, 5 was super popular on the truck. So on the 4.0, that's probably what I would stick with. It's actually what we tried to run initially in the 8XT, and it liked lighter oils. So.
All right. Okay, so this is, will we see an 8XE Truggy? Not asking when.
Moving on.
Not asking when. I tried to get into that. I try to help you guys, like trying to get Ryan to answer questions, see if he gets himself in trouble, trying to get it out there. But no, he's pretty strong, man. It's not going to be easy to get him to cough up the secrets.
It would be silly of us to not try to make something that a number of customers have asked for.
Yeah. So what I've noticed every time since I've been team manager, every time we do a live thing, we get countless questions about Truggy and when's the next Truggy. So, yeah, I think it's safe to say.
Well, and the second you come out with that, it's the next question. Okay, well, when do we get an 8XT?
Yeah.
And then the next question, well, when do we get a 2.0? And then the next question, and then when do we get an 8? It's just like, oh. And that's okay. That's part of the game. It takes time to do the right stuff, guys. Yeah. And I think ultimately, looking at the market that exists today, we are absolutely at Horizon. I feel 100% behind the decision we've made with the 8XT, and I'll just leave it at that.
There you go. I also agree with it too. If that matters, if that even matters at all, I don't think it really does. I don't think it.
Technically speaking, you should be in my ear more than anybody else, because if all this was normal, your desk would be right behind me at the office.
I know. So we're like desk buddies, but not yet. Nope. In the future, when then things get back to normal, it might happen. Yep. All right, Eric Everett, what's going on, man? Good to hear from you. Ryan just posted it, so check it out.
Yeah, it's been on my site, on my personal page, but hopefully that link, it's the link that was posted by Team Lucy Racing, because that's what I'm posting under right now.
Yep.
And that goes to my because I tried just putting the PDF in, and it won't let me do that. It wouldn't even let me load a picture for some reason. So I put the link. Hopefully it works. So you guys will have to let me know. And if not, just go to my personal page, and it's towards the end of May.
Yeah, check it out. Eric, it's He's like, we've had phone conversations obviously throughout the week, and he says it's his best shocks he's ever driven and put together.
Well, and it's not, so I don't base it on how it feels to me necessarily. A lot of my stuff is, hey, I tried this, it worked for me. What do you think? And I'll get it to the next guy, and then he'll get it to the next guy, and then we'll all get it to the next guy. And so far, this is one of them that I've been, hey, I put your whole setup on. I made one little minor change for me personally, but other than that, from the get-go, it was the best I'd ever driven. And I'm like, that's good to hear. And I've heard that like a few times now, and usually if people are kind enough to give the kind word back, it's a good thing, because I'll get all the negative stuff back all day. So
Alrighty. Here we go. Kevin Johnson wants to know, is the 8X Elite so much better than the previous version?
Everybody that I've talked to says it's almost equivalent to a 2.0.
Yeah, I would say so.
If you had the 8X and you put all of the parts on it, the hop-ups, the upgrades, the changes, the updates,
yep,
then you have the handling part of an Elite. The only purpose of getting an Elite at that point would be because you want the black front brace, because you can buy the black towers. You cannot purchase the black front brace for what it's worth.
Will that be available?
The only way you can get that is to buy the actual Elite kit or to buy one off of eBay. And they are very expensive because people know that's the only way you can get it. But the purpose of the Elite car was, we learned so much stuff. We made so many option parts. We did this and that. Again, I come from being on a budget. I would rather figure out how to make this one box purchase for somebody that wants to come into TLR right now today, or buy a new kit because the Psycho Nitro Blast is coming up and they feel they need a new kit. This is a way for them to get at the time. That's exactly what we were running. That's what the setup, that's the car we were all running. And the only way to get to that would be to buy an 8X and then buy all these other parts. And what a pain in the butt. That's why we came out with that. And it was like, okay, it made perfect sense at the time. So is there that big of a difference between the two? Yes, there absolutely is. But if you had the first one and you put all the parts on along the way, you already got it.
Yeah.
So
Matt Miller, Ryan. Well, Ryan, you posted this a setup on May 27th. Is that the most current setup for us old guys?
Yeah, it says. Well, what's the date on it? Oh, crud. This three screen thing is messing me all up. Sorry. The date on the top of the sheet says 5/26.
Okay.
For what it's worth, 5/26/20 is the setup sheet date. And the easiest way to tell would be it has the standard hexes on it.
Not the +1
hex. Something Don learned and was kind enough to share. So Don's awesome about sharing stuff with the team, and I truly appreciate having him to bounce ideas off of.
Yeah, he's a great dude. I'm looking forward to moving out there. Matt Miller wants to know, Thomas Tran, are you going to get to trackside before you move?
Maybe on the way of moving.
I may not. I don't know. We basically have. I will probably be in, out of here in Champaign in a month. So I got about a month. We'll see if I have time. Buddy.
Time to make the rounds before you go. Luckily, it's your job. You can do it Monday through Friday now.
Well, the thing is now is that I can go to trackside when we go to the race there.
Right.
Yeah. No. I'll see what I can do and see how much time I have left. We're supposed to. Me and Dakota are supposed to meet up again. I think next week. I have got to talk to him and kind of figure out some plans, but we're going to do some running. I know he's kind of getting itchy to run the 8 scale and stuff. And then we have right after that kind of a busy schedule, hopefully that we start to get going into. So we'll see. Trackside, I would love to. It looks awesome, but we'll check it out. Dale Best, I want to thank Dale Best for taking me to the track. He picked me up, swung by, picked me up, went to Impact and spent the day running there. Ground some tires down. Didn't have a drill here because I have half my stuff in storage. but
Didn't
borrowed a
have a
drill.
drill.
Borrowed a drill.
Makes my head hurt.
Sanded my tires down the slicks. I actually also sanded Dale's tires down the slicks. I was like, you know what, man, I'm gonna hook him up and get him some tires. He's never done it before. I was like, well, here, let me do it because it's kind of like such a common thing these days for tensile racing. But yeah, but thanks to Dale, I was able to run my 4-wheel, my 2-wheel. I was at the track again. It felt good to be back at the track running something. Man, my 4-wheel was cool. It was such a fun car to drive. Let me tell you though, the reason why I know this car is good is because yeah, I'm out of practice, but I can still understand and feel how to drive a car and what it's doing. What I felt was that the 22X4, it was better than me. So at my skill level, when when I was driving on the track, it was doing things that basically was putting me in trouble because the car was doing so much. And it would be up to me to be able to make difficult turns and jumps and situations into something that's very fluid for other great drivers, right? When you're tapped into a lot of practice and laps, you really start to be able to squeeze out as much as you can. Since I am still pretty capable of driving, but I'm not super practiced up, the car was better than me. It was ahead of me. Like, I know if I was going to give my car to somebody else that was good, they're going to take it and do way faster lap times than I could. So that, saying that, that's saying that the car, there's a lot more of my potential to actually get better, to actually get the most out of the car. So I didn't feel like my driving was very good, but the car was amazing, and I know there's a ton more speed out there. Even though I drove it good, I was like, man, there's so much. I still feel so nervous and twitchy, and like in areas where I know if I was more practiced, I wouldn't have a problem. I would know how fast the car would rotate certain corners and stuff. But it has this really weird slide pivot thing that it does. Once you get on gas, it can go. Like the front and rear are working together so well that when it's in a tight turn, the back and front can kind of swap positions really fast, and it can jump and get out of it. It's actually very unique to this car. I haven't seen it too many times, and I've seen a lot of full races, man, a lot. And this is one of the few cars that I've seen do it. And when I watch Dakota drive the car, it does it then. And I'm like, what? How is this working like this? But anyways, thanks Dale for allowing me to get on the track. It was fun hanging out. I look forward to hanging out again in the future at some point in time. Okay. And next thing we know, Don Vinkmulder is given his 710-3. Is that Don? Is that for the Truggy?
That's for his Truggy, his 4.0 Truggy. That he's turned half into an 8XT-ish. But it works awesome. So I would believe Don and his Truggy diffs versus what I said. So 710-3 sounds good.
So here we go. Omar, hey, what are some suggestions to the original 8XE to calm down the steering currently on Diff's 774, which is pretty basic?
The very first thing I would do to any 8X vehicle of any type is put at least a 2.6 front sway bar on it. It's a completely
Why
different
does that
car.
help? Why does that help this car so much?
It balances how the front. So we kept watching the car, and it's like you watch it, it's like, man, the front, it seems like it's working so good, but the rear end is doing all this stuff. But as I watched it more and more and more, what I realized was the front was just kind of overpowering, and it was leaning in, which would cause the rear to pop up rather than the rear to settle down. And so anytime you have that happen, it means the front's overpowering the rear. So as we took more essentially power out of the front, since we have so much steering as it is, as we controlled the dip or the dive in or the lean of the front end, it was amazing how much, because it's super easy to put steering back, and so the second, it was a huge part of balancing the front and rear end of the car. I mean, anybody that's tried the 2.6, some have tried a 2.7 or a 2.8. It's like, oh, okay, well, you can try it. Yeah, do what you want. I mean, I don't know. 2.6 is where I stopped. I tried a 2.7. For me, it was too stiff for like the types of tracks. And honestly, I need to try to develop something that's also going to work well for Dakota. So that's kind of, I stopped there because 2.7 was like super numb. I mean, you can numb out this car. It is amazing the profound effect the front sway bar has on the 8X series.
Interesting.
So the very first thing I would tell anybody to do is put a 2.6 on there. And the original 8XE, it did not come with a 2.6 rear bar or a 2.6 front. I mean, the Elites come with the 2.6 front. But the sway bar set that we sell, it's only like $9 or $10 or something like that, has a 2.6 rear bar in it, and you just cut it and put it on the front. But I mean, if you don't want to even spend any money and you just want to try, the original 8XE I think came with a 2.7 rear, so cut the 2.7 rear and throw that on the front. And if it doesn't numb, if it's not super numb and you think the rest can be tuned around for you, then hey, you're set. So
all right, there you go. Here we go. It's a good question by Gregory Johnson. I'm trying to get back into the hobby. I got an 8 RTR. I already removed the pull start. What else can I upgrade to make it more competitive? 8X isn't in the budget. A house and kids. So
I understand that. Priorities, buddy.
Yeah.
I mean, so the 8 RTR, thinking back on that car, I probably the first thing I would do is, honestly, I'd pull it apart and rebuild it. Make sure everything's greased right. Make sure everything, the oils are right in it. You could probably put aluminum. I can't remember the most recent one has. Does it have composite shock bodies on that still? It's just been so long since I mean. So the first thing I would ask anytime somebody asks me something like this is, again, we get back to the hop up versus practice question. So the very first thing you do to make it more competitive is it set up right in its existing form? Meaning little things like when people get an 8 RTR, and I don't know why, 50% of the people will take the shock collars and spin them all the way down and raise it up because, you know, it doesn't bottom out as much that way. It really does. You're just messing up the ride height, and then the car doesn't work as well. So the very first thing I probably would do with an RTR would be either myself or somebody that I know that's experienced to go through it. Make sure you set the ride height for the 8 RTR series that was kind of between the 3.0 and 4.0. I'd probably set somewhere around a 27 front, 28 rear ride height to start off with. Make sure your cambers are set right and all that. Get it set up right, and then see how it's working on the track for you. Get the right tires on it. See how it's working. Get some practice under your belt, and then see what you need. Meaning, do I need more steering? Do I need more rear grip? Do I need something out of the car that a new part or a hop-up's going to get me? So like the 8 RTR series, I'm pretty sure they come with fixed links. I don't even know if they have adjustable links. Like it's been a really long time since I looked at that. I might have to look it up.
Gotcha.
But I'd put adjustable links on it. You know, to me that would be a super good. Let's see here. Where are we at? I do know that. I mean, it actually works pretty darn good right out of the box, but it's really easy to mess up any car very quickly. Yeah, it's got fixed links. So as far as it's got fixed links and composite bodies. So if I really just wanted to spend some money on it, first I'd definitely put adjustable links on it so that I can adjust my camber and my toe and stuff like that. I could get a little bit more toe out into it, get a little bit more camber for the bumps into it. And then if I really felt I needed something past that, I'd get aluminum shock bodies for it. But past that, it would be all practice and all setup. So changing diff oils, rebuilding diffs, putting shock oil in it that works better for you, that kind of thing.
All right, there you go, Gregory. Hope that helps you out. Oh, this is great. So Kevin Johnson asks, are you all answering questions on the the 5B? It's like all caps locks. It's like, yeah, we did answer your question. Your
I answered my one weird 5B question.
Yeah. See, we answered this question. Is TLR coming out with a new low C 5B 2.0? Or they? Yeah. So like, I don't know why you got all mad and went all caps on us, man. Easy there, buddy. No, we did answer that question, and yeah. So next question. Nico Listi, Ryan? What are your thoughts on the front overdrive kit?
So if it's a track and it's got like a super, how do you put that? I would say like a super marbly top, like
Polished.
if it no, like
No?
if you've got kind of a softer base and a track that has like stuff that almost roll around, not rocks obviously, but almost like a sandy top layer.
Okay.
That tends to, when you grab the gas, the car's kind of doing this thing because the tires are actually rolling over the sand. The overdrive seems to help pull the front end and make the car go straight as you're pulling the throttle. That's the only situation I personally have found that I really liked it. Anything past that, I felt like it like I'm going and I'm picking up the throttle, it kind of snaps the rear to the front and snaps the rear to the front if there's a lot of grip. So if there's a lot of grip, I wouldn't recommend it. Is it something I have in my box that I try from time to time? Yeah. If there's a like a looser topsoil to the track I'm on, when I was out, what is it called now? It used to be called Wild West. I don't know if it's even called Gladiators anymore. Whatever the heck the track out in Winchester is called now. That track, I loved the overdrive in the front. It worked really well out there for me. But it is this track that it's got this top layer on it that if they don't keep super moisture in it, which happens because there's not a lot of moisture out there, I really like the overdrive. But it's something you have to try. I would never be like, this is a situation everybody needs to put it in, because it's very specific to a person. Some people really like it. They have to find the situation where they like it.
Right. All right. Justin Doyle wants to know, are you running the HD center case in the e-buggy?
Absolutely. I run it in everything.
Yeah, I think e-buggy would make a lot of difference because there's so much power in e-buggy. So it actually would benefit the e-buggy kind of the most. It's spinning that thing so much more. All right.
Yeah, you run it in that for the power. You run it in the truggy for the weight and the heat. You run it in the buggy for the heat. I mean, it's a benefit because there's more oil.
All right, Matthew Whitehead, another question from him. This is for the both of us. Spectrum or Futaba, pros and cons. Don't want to get into this one because we can get into radios and that be a whole nother episode and 5 more. So, for me,
and everybody's going to think that we're biased anyway because
Spectrum
is a Verizon brand, even though I'm not a biased person.
Yeah,
I would be super biased because technically I was the product developer for the DX6R, so. Guess what I'm going to pick?
Yeah. I'm going to, you know what? Futaba makes a great radio. Airtronics makes a great radio.
They do.
You know, and some people are going to like the Spectrum stuff. So it's just kind of, it's one of those things.
I will say the latest Futaba radio is way easier to use than their previous versions. I will give them credit for that.
So. And I will say the M17 radio is one of the crappiest menu systems I've ever used.
It's rough. I have a hard time with it.
Yeah, the UI, the interface, how you change things, the buttons,
awesome.
All of it sucks to me. I would rather run an M12, just for feel, but I get the performance is 30% faster. So you basically go from, you know, what, a point 5 to
most of the pros turn their radio down.
Yeah, that's the problem. I don't get it.
It feels foreign. You can go, so a brain has a frame rate too, and if people don't realize that a human being has a certain frame rate, they'll never understand that stuff. So
the processing time from what we see to that goes into our eye or to our brain, there's actually a delay
and comes back to our hands.
Yeah,
that's frame rate, right? That's exactly what it is. It's just like a frame rate.
How long it takes us to interpret that, our brain and our eyes, and then that signal coming back. It actually takes a lot longer than what radios have. So I would just say find a radio.
We're going forever. I don't think we're going to be able to show the 8XT anymore.
Man,
I remember, huh?
Do you remember?
I even got approval.
Remember when the show started, I was like, hey, let's just do an hour, and then we could get taking questions for an hour and a half. It just ends up going,
Yeah.
and it's 3 hours later. So I'm gonna try to pump through these last few questions, guys. It is already 3 hours, so here we go. And next question by Matthew: what chargers? I use the Spectrum 2100,
Me too.
S2100. Great charger, and I love the size. It's easy to use. The smart charging feature, I'm not that big on it because I'm only running for 5 minutes. I don't need to know exactly like my battery temperature, my all that stuff on my radio. It's nice, but I don't really use it. I just want to run for 5 minutes. Give me good power. It work, please. That's all.
It's simple, and especially if you're running like e-buggy and you plug in a smart battery and you
Yes.
push a button, it's so nice. It's
You
like, oh,
don't
click.
have, yeah, you don't have to when it's a smart battery and smart charger. You don't have to change anything and set the
No.
cells,
It's all set up. It knows how
Yeah,
many cycles you have on it. It knows everything.
yeah. You just hit charge and hit start, hit OK, and then you're done. Go. So you don't have to So then you go charge a 10 scale battery or a 2S battery. You can just plug it in and it knows you hit start. It's very simple, user friendly. So I like it. I like the size of it too. So. It's great. Very portable.
Well, in my 90-pound pit bag, it's delightful.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. Question here. Header length affects engine snap. True?
Absolutely.
There
The
you
longer
go.
you get, the more bottom end you're going to get. But you got to retune for it.
Oh, man. Jonathan, Ryan Dunford, do you have a shopping list of parts required to get either an 8X or 8X Elite to your setup? So currently stuff that you're running on your Elite goods.
The light rear ring gear, while you're finding the next question, I'll answer it. The light rear ring gear, the HD rod ends, rear universals, and for those you need another pair of 8x16 bearings, and the carbon fiber chassis rib, and 5x1.5 tapered shock pistons.
There
and
you
then
go.
whatever springs you want to run in that kind of
Kevin
stuff.
Johnson, another question. Here you go. Thanks a lot, Kevin. Loving your 5B, huh? Okay. Here we go. Travis Slover, do you ever make minor setup changes simply by changing tire tread or compounds? I make minor changes, even like changing sauce sometimes. So some sauce are very aggressive. Some sauce lasts longer on the tire for 5 minutes, whatever. So, change. Yeah, you change tire. Like actually changing tires and changing compound is actually kind of a big change.
Yeah, I don't consider that a minor. That's a pretty major.
That's a big change, especially when you race outdoor and the temperature outside is changing, the track's changing, the track temperature is changing, the sun is out. All those things affect which tire you're gonna pick, and if you pick the wrong tire, it's usually
how you want it to go through the bumps, the forward traction it has. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, tires can affect everything.
Yeah, like minor change, the quarter turn on the right height. That's the minor change. Yep. Okay, and so Frank asked about the Mugen springs over the TLR springs, what the differences are. Ryan already spoke about that, so if you want to back up in the video, you can.
My speed, I'm on the TLR springs. At Dakota speed, he's on the Mugen springs, and some people run them just because they want to be different.
Okay, now that people are getting into your setup now, what do you notice using the regular hexes versus the +1 hex?
The car with the regular hexes tends to follow a line a bit better in a dusty environment. I did notice that when I ran. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Don answered it. Thanks, buddy.
Don, dude, saving the day. Here you go. If the grip is good at your particular track, you can run the +1 wheel hexes. The standard hexes are really good when the track is on the loose side and bumpy. So narrow
I did
track
notice
width,
that when I went to narrower hexes, I liked the car about a quarter turn, the whole thing a little lower.
Interesting.
It's a support thing. It has to do with where the tire now is versus the shock.
Yep. There you go. Don, also a dude that runs with Ryan a ton. Every time I run the Mugen Springs, the car felt lazy and bottomed out on flat lands. I 100% prefer the Evo
Yeah,
Springs.
the Mugen never, for me, the Mugen never like came to a neutral point.
The
The
just
Mugen
kind of
Springs on our car always felt like the car's
moving.
rolling or moving front to back.
Yep.
But Dakota likes that about them. So some people like it, some people don't. The Evo Spring tends to go into a corner and then it'll settle, and then go into a corner and then it'll settle. And I need a reset from time to time. So
Yeah. All right. Do you know what Evo Springs you would recommend that's close to a Mugen 87, a 9, and a 925?
You know, 2.5 years ago, I probably could have answered that because I made a spring chart, and I don't know that I have it on this computer. If I find it, I'll try to answer that. What I know that as far as Evo springs that we run today is we carry green and blue fronts. We carry the violet still, but we haven't gotten to that in ages. But now that the car is more balanced, we're actually running a softer front spring on it. We typically are always on a red rear, but every so often I'll see somebody go to an orange. If the grip goes up, then yeah, we'll end up on like violet orange from time to time.
Frank asks a good question here. What are the effects of raising and lowering the rear hub? And if you do you keep the same shock length? Good question.
I always adjust my droop on droop blocks. And so if I adjust the hub height, I'm gonna fix my droop, which is gonna bring me to the same height again versus where it was before.
Yep.
So the short answer is yes, I adjust my shock length because I want when I make changes, I want to make one change. So if I'm changing the hub height, I change the hub height and then I put the droop back to where it was versus the ground. But raising the hub, so the lower the hub is, the more side bite you'll have in the car, the more the car follows a line. The higher it is, the more forward bite and the more kind of drive straight out of a corner you're going to get. Strangely enough, that's kind of how we ended up like our standard setup. And this was one of the things that helped balance the car. The main reason we're running aluminum hubs right now is because we wanted the middle. Because I wanted some of that forward bite. I really wanted the car to go out of a turn. And it felt like it was something we were missing when we were running the hub all the way down, but all the way up. For somebody like me, a normal human being, it felt like the car would just over rotate. But boy, once it grabbed and went forward, it was like, oh, this is awesome. So when it's high grip, I will raise my hubs up all the way. And pretty much all the rest of the time, I run them in the middle hole. It's very rare when I run my hubs all the way down nowadays. And it has to do with the balance of the car and the way it supports the rear end.
All right. So we're going to take one last question. I don't know why my thing is echoing now, but
it's not on my end. It sounds normal to me. So
that's maybe my internet. Let's end it on this one. Here we go. Ryan, are you using 36 millimeter droop blocks? Why the magic number 36?
So basically you want it as short as possible because it fits in the box the best, with a block that you can still use for buggy and truggy. If you get any shorter, if we went to say 35, when you go to adjust the droop on the truggy to get it right versus the suspension, literally the hubs are like sitting on the ground.
That one, huh? That one mil. All right.
Well, the reality is, if we end up trying more droop on the truggy, then our droop box are going to be too small, so we'll have to make new ones. But right now, that's why we stayed with 36, and it's pretty industry standard now. So,
all right. So, last question here, guys. Robert Chapman wants to know, when will the droop blocks be made available?
They are already cut and packaged, and they should be on the way. So now it's how fast can we get them placed into a picking spot and then get the part live. So hoping
Sweet.
in the next week or two, I will, of course, let everybody know when they're in stock. I actually just asked about them and when they're going to be able to be in stock. So, because I want them, because I would love to just be, yeah, these are the ones you can use.
What about
easier.
what about the 8-skill shock tool? When's that coming?
Those the POs were done. They're all cut. They need to print header cards and package them still, because you get the bottom and top. Even though I only use the bottom, I still use a freaking MIP wrench in the top.
Yeah, yeah.
It is what it is, but yeah.
All right.
I'm hoping not more than 3 to 4 weeks, but you never know.
All right. So Frank has a good question about measuring droop, but we could save that stuff for another video, another time. We revisit with Ryan. We'll get maybe
a picture for that, and I can't post that here, so I might go in and reply and see if I can post it on regular Facebook.
Yeah, so maybe in another edition we can do like more advanced, and we can do some explanations of some of these things, and Ryan can actually show you some of the parts and stuff. But we want to do kind of a light one to kind of get people some information, some help, some interest, and hopefully kind of cater to that. But obviously you guys are getting in with very advanced questions, but it's also very cool to see everybody participating, wanting to reach out and be a part of the live experience with TLR here and the 8-skill edition of learning, right? We're just learning some 8-skill stuff, some knowledge, dropping some knowledge, getting some advice, and hopefully become better racers in the future. So I want to thank Ryan for his time. He just got out of the dentist, and didn't have to come and show us his 8XT trucky.
Hi guys.
So yeah, it's looking beautiful, man. I know there's a lot of people waiting for this truck. He's put a lot of time into this, and it's definitely on the way. We just have to wait some more, and it's just as all good things, new stuff. You got to wait for it.
COVID affected everybody differently, guys, and unfortunately, there were some delays and stuff that happened because of it, and we're fighting some of that, but we're fighting it as best we can, and it's not going to ship until it's right. I mean, it's right; it's sitting there. I just got to get all the parts made, which took all the vendors had to get back up and running. I mean, it's just part of the game.
Yeah, so thanks to Ryan. Thanks, Ryan, for joining me and being able to talk with everybody, sharing your knowledge and insight to 8-skill, and sharing with me. So I'm learning too. It's always a lot of fun to hang out and talk with you, Ryan. I appreciate it. Thank you. And I want to also thank everybody that's been a part of the show weekend after week. Yeah, weekend after week, we're doing these 3-hour-long crazy things. My plan in my head is like an hour with 30 minutes of Q&A. For some reason, it just never really goes that way. The conversations just kind of naturally flow this way. So I'm just going to go with it. And it's because you guys ask a lot of questions. You stick around, you want to hear answers and stuff, and this is why we're doing it. And this is why it takes a long time sometimes. We've got to fill and try to help and do as much as we can to grow the hobby, have as much fun as we can at the track, and hopefully just
Yes, it is about fun.
Yes.
We'll never forget that, guys. It's a hobby. We're there to learn and have a good time together and play with our cars.
Yep.
I mean,
so I hope everybody's safe. I hope everybody's doing well. I know the times are even crazier now, but we'll make it through this. We've made it through a lot of things as a nation, so don't worry. We'll be there as a world, so we'll make it. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, Ryan. Again, thanks a lot for your time. 3 hours of extra work for you. I'm sorry about that, but hey, I think everybody appreciated it.
And, we're helping people.
Yeah. So good night for me. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And we'll see you next week with the 10-skill version of this. I'll sit down with Frank, and we will talk about all the things revolving around 10-skill and the 10-skill project, since Frank is the product developer for 10-skill. So lots of insight. you know, Ryan has a lot of insights, and he has a truck that he's showing off. So not cool, buddy. Not cool. Anyways, good night. Good night, Ryan. Thanks a lot.
Good night, guys.
All right. See you guys later.